"He's so tired he isn't even having fun anymore when we play," she cried tearfully, and he found himself unsure on what to do. Was Ashura really pushing him that much? He couldn't imagine why. Moat Cailin wasn't even fully functionally occupiable yet, and there were many years till Jon was of age. But their daughter wasn't the type to cry over nothing, and here she was pouring her little heart out. "I asked Mother why he needed to learn High Valyrian and why he was reading Armor Someone's War Engines, but she wouldn't tell me. It's not fair that..." He froze, letting the rest of his daughter's words flow right past him. It couldn't be, could it? He wondered, while his hands trembled. But everything clicked into place. Teaching him High Valyrian, reading scrolls of war. "I'm not doing it for you." He remembered her words the day he had laid Jon in her arms. And how she had been so insistent Moat Cailin be Jon's seat, that she had been willing to risk her life for it. "Gods, I pray I am wrong." "Don't worry," he told his daughter stiffly, "I will talk to your mother." "Ashura Dayne. This man. Armin. Who is he?" "He's a maester," she offered helpfully. Ned looked annoyed at her brevity. "I mean, where did you get him and why is he here?" "I think Maester Luwin is more than capable of handling Jon and Lya's education, don't you?" Why were they back on this? Had they not already had this entire discussion once before? "Maester Luwin is an excellent teacher," she acknowledged. "And he still tutors them in everything he was before, like history, astronomy and medicine. But I needed someone with a tin link among other things." "Then what does Maester Armin provide?" "He has his own expertise to offer." "Surely, you won't begrudge me for wanting more learned children." He pursed his lips. "And how did you even find a maester willing to come here and play tutor instead of taking vows to a keep?" "I have my ways," she told him mysteriously. "Even a traitor has friends." She could see she'd pushed him to his limit. "You're teaching Jon High Valyrian," he stated plainly, making her smile fade. "Among other things, but how did he know?" "And what is wrong with that?" she posed innocently. "Noble children around the kingdoms learn it. Even Robb and Sansa are. They learn how to say a couple phrases, nothing more. Not to read, write and speak it fluently. Only princes and princesses of House Targaryen did that," he left unsaid. "Which is the reason I assume you wanted a maester with a mastery over languages." "Perhaps I wish for him to learn of his heritage, even if he does not know it." "Heritage? Is that what you call it?" Ned stated sourly, "The books on war strategy too." She regarded him silently. "You were never even going to tell me, were you?" "I had to learn of it from our 9-year-old daughter of all people." She was upset that you were keeping Jon away even longer for his studies and he had less time to play with the rest of them. Lyra, she wanted to groan. She should have known her daughter wouldn't have been satisfied with her refusal. So she'd tried instead to pull rank on her by going to Ned. All after she had even allowed her extra time off rather than force her to share Jon's full lessons, knowing she would likely complain about it. Because of this, she told him. "I knew this was exactly how you would act if I told you. It is not some big secret, Ned. If it were, believe me, you would never have heard a whiff of it. I just don't desire any unwanted questions from wandering eyes. Like your wife, gods only know how she would blow up that information. So I am handling it discreetly. I'm not a fool, Ash. I know you. It might have taken me a while to put it together, but now that I have, I can see exactly what you are pushing him for, and I will tell you once it is not going to happen." And the jig was up. "I will tell him the truth on his 11th name day," she revealed. "He is old enough to understand the gravity of what it means, yet young enough still for it to not hurt him as much. A year and 6 more moons. Not hurt him as much." Ned shook his head. "You can't really believe that." "Of course it would hurt him." It was the part of this that she was looking forward to the least. Jon had grown as attached to her as she was to him. But as much as she hated the pain it would bring him, he needed to know. It would only hurt him more the longer they waited. And she could sit him down and explain it slowly, she convinced herself. She could make him see it didn't matter who birthed him, that she would always love him, that he'd always be her darling little boy no matter what. But he had to know he was a king too, and one day he would have to serve justice against all those who had committed atrocities across his realm. "He will take over his lordship within a year," she continued as if she hadn't heard him. And once he turns 16 he will marry Princess Ariane and take back his crown. It will be tough to cleanse those flaws, it is true, but enough blood always does the trick. He was staring at her quietly. I thought you had let it go, he finally said, disappointed. Let it go, she whispered dangerously, let it go. She didn't know why the words infuriated her so, but blood pumped furiously to her head. She grabbed the collar of his doublet in her fists. They murdered my princess in cold blood, raped her and killed her children. My sister. I will never let it go. Not till I get the justice that was denied to her. You would throw the realm into war for it. How many thousands died in your war when you rode bound by duty to answer the crimes against your brother and father? She challenged. I am bound by the same duty. But it is not you who will be riding, is it? Whatever you do, you will not drag Jon into this. Oh, believe me, I'd love nothing more than to do it with mine own hand. But women don't always get that luxury, so we must work with what we have, don't we? Jon has been a part of this from the moment he was born. Do you not understand that? Neither of us can change it. Ned Stark. And if he doesn't want to, would you just let him go? He will want to, she replied stubbornly. And I think you are afraid that he might really want to. If he does, what will you have to do? You don't want to have to go against your fool of a friend, so you are trying to take Jon's choice away from him. But I won't let you, it isn't your decision to make. It's not yours either, Ash. No, it is Jon's. And I can hazard a guess of what he will choose, she told him, and he could detect the tiniest hint of smugness. Who he will choose, she meant, he thought angrily. What he would choose was her. Not any crown. Listen to me, Ash, he buzzed urgently, you don't understand what you sow. Soldiers win wars, and Robert is the fiercest warrior in all the realm. Every enemy commander he defeated, he did it by his own hand. Mark Grafton in Gulltown, Rhaegar on the Trident. Jon Connington, who slew Daenerys Arryn, the darling of the Vale. Sir Miles Mouton, bold as brass, one of the most famous knights in the realm. They had reputation, every one of them, for good reason, and Robert still beat them all. He is peerless in combat. And, you have not seen his wrath, not like I have. If he knew who Jon really was, that he was a Targaryen, he would never stop hunting him till his last breath. The only good dragon is a dead one, he shuddered, remembering the king's rage the last he'd stood in the throne room. Good. That is exactly what I intend, to see Baratheon dead. And how do you plan on that, he challenged. With all your knowledge of war, I presume. Or did you intend for me to do that part for you? She turned away, lips pursed. A war can be won long before the first battle is fought. The words were so wrong to his ears, he could barely stop a sigh of exasperation. She had no idea what she was speaking about. No, it can't. Or the Mad King would still yet sit on the Iron Throne, he disagreed. Wars are won on the battlefield. And you are not capable of doing this on your own. I am. But if you don't think so, help me. She clutched his arm pleadingly. You know it was wrong as much as I do. What they did. But we can change things, Ned. We can make a better kingdom with a better king. That's what justice requires. Ashur Dayne. He only shook his head. You must put an end to this foolishness. Jon will be well taken care of as Lord of Moat Cailin. He will have a good life, a far better one than the assassins and plots a crown would bring. That is what is important. She pulled away sharply at his rejection, the beginnings of red sprouting along her cheeks. That will never happen. Not while Dawn is still burning for justice. Your friend is up to his head in debt, that whoring drunk you call king. So a single loan from the Iron Bank, with the gold we will have from Moat Cailin, and Jon will have the entire Golden Company at his back as well. He gaped at her in incredulity. Gods! What are you doing, Ashura? He asked helplessly. He's a boy. He's 9 years old. He's a king, she hissed. He's always been a king. And he won't be a boy for long. The Iron Throne is his by rights. No, it isn't. Jon has no claim to the throne, not after Robert won it, he hissed back. Not anymore. The Targaryens are done with. I fought a war for that. For whether Aisling was fit to rule. After he murdered my father and brother, and how many countless others. She felt a flash of anger pass through her at the reminder. Yes, and now I will fight one to get rid of your usurper. The one who did nothing as Prince Aegon Targaryen, an infant boy, had his head smashed against a wall. When Princess Rhaenys Targaryen was stabbed to death 100 times, and when Elia Martell, Princess of Dorne, was raped and cut in half with a great sword, even though she and her children were hostages. That stag you propped up is no more fit to rule than the Mad King was, nor are any of his line. Why so silent now, she thought to ask, where is your condemnation for that? At what cost, Ash? Whatever cost justice demands. This isn't justice, he shook his head, it's vengeance. In this case, they are one and the same. And what about what it is costing you? You saw what madness the Targaryens left on Robert. How it consumed him. Is that what you are trying to become as well? I cannot watch that happen to you. How dare he? How dare he compare her to that oaf in any way? She felt dark emotions bubbling in her, spite and contempt and a baying desire for blood. I am what I am, Ned. As you are what you are. And the way I see it, you are hardly the paragon of righteousness to be advising me on the right way to do things. Not when you sat back to his every injustice just as spineless as they all say you are, she raged. You are truly nothing but the usurper's dog. A hypocrite and his loyal little pet. Ned Stark. Her words stung. Robert is my king. Robert is the king. Well, I will tell you now that man is not my king. Jon is. We only ever bowed to the dragons, not the stags. Tell me, why is it Robert Baratheon is sitting on that throne and not you? Because he's the one with Targaryen blood. You will not convince me, you are doing this because you care for any birthright. No, I'm not. I'm doing it because it is what's right. And because it will finally serve justice. That is what I've always done. I wasn't scared of the Mad King. And I am certainly not scared of Tywin Lannister or his stag puppet. I will see all their heads hang. No, he thought, stuck between a cry and a laugh. He didn't know if she had ever feared anything in her life, and he knew only too well of her stubbornness. You are not going to do this. He growled, taking her tightly by the arm. The command came as easily to his mouth as it had thousands of times, before he realized who he was speaking to. She would never simply obey him like how he had grown so used to men doing over the years. Her lips twitched in amusement as she seemed to pick up on it as well. You might control the North, Ned Stark, but you do not control me. His fingers pressed furiously against her skin. I will burn every shred of proof with my own hand if I have to. She only smiled. You can't. Not unless you can somehow stop Jon from not burning. She pulled herself free of his grip forcefully, and he saw the deep red marks he had left behind. All it would take was one raven, and what do you think your king with his madness for Targaryens would do? Face it, you have no choice the moment the truth comes free. And it is I who am in control of that. So you will fall in line, whether you wish it or not. She was right, he thought faintly, she held all the cards. The moment it came out, there was nothing that could be done. Robert's fury would hound Jon every moment after, and she knew that as well as he did. She was holding him hostage with the truth, he thought, and suddenly his fury was upon him. If this was what she had been putting her mind to for all these years, there was nothing enough to pull her off her current course. Except, he knew how much she loved Jon. No matter how far this vengeance had consumed her, he knew how fiercely she had grown to care for the boy and how deeply protective she was over him, and he abhorred himself for ever thinking what he said next. It's the only way to give her pause. If that is what Jon decides to do, to follow you, then I can do nothing but pray for him in his effort. The North will not rebel against Robert, not for a Targaryen king. He saw her face scrunch in confusion before his words finally sank in. You wouldn't. You would protect him. That much I would, he acquiesced. He will always have a home here and my protection in the North. Even Robert would know it's a fool's errand to try and take him here. Ned wasn't fully sure how true that was. It was what he'd be counseled, but Robert had always done as he pleased. He'd never been one for patience even before he was king. He was just as likely to name Ned a traitor as well in his fury and march north with all his might. Still he persevered. But if Jon wishes for more, he'd be his own man making his own choice. As would I. You don't actually believe that would fool me, do you? Jon is your son. I know you, Ned. You would never abandon him, abandon your blood. If you know me so well, you know I swore oaths to my king. Oaths I will uphold. Yes, she replied, her mouth twisting bitterly. Honest Ned Stark, who kept every oath he ever made, except the one he made to me. He looked away, pained. That won't work anymore, Ashura. You have no idea how much I regret it, how much. Believe me, that choice will haunt me for the rest of my life, just like it has every second since then, but I will not be guilt-tripped into your war. I don't believe you, she rebuffed. Then do it, he challenged. Tell Jon the truth, and see what happens. Maybe I will. She barked after getting in his face. You love him, I know you wouldn't turn your back on him. I loved you too, more than you could have ever imagined, he told her. I love you still, more than you will ever know, but I cannot let you do this, Ash. But I still chose the honor of my house, of House Stark. I chose the duty my father promised over my love for you. I didn't forget, she gritted, face darkening. Then why would this be any different? Robert is my sworn king. Have you ever known me to turn my back on my duty? He finished coldly. For the first time he saw a flicker of doubt cross her at his lie, and now her eyes burned in fury. You would really choose that oath, over your love for Jon? For honor, she spat. Go then, die with your honor intact while sacrificing everything else. We don't need you. You think Dorne alone can withstand Robert's fury? You cannot win without the North. I never said that we could. I just said we don't need you, she met his eyes challengingly. The North will follow me, as they have followed the Starks for thousands of years. But you are not the only Stark, are you? He snorted in disbelief. Good luck with that. Continue this madness and Jon will die, and it will all be on your hands. He thought he saw her shake at the words, but then there was just fire in her eyes. That wasn't enough. No, he won't, she asserted back to her self-assured self. Because he will have me behind him to plan everything. Just watch, Ned, she promised sharply, my son will win. With all the gods as my witness, one day he will lay Tywin Lannister in front of me, and right before he takes that monster's head I will rejoice knowing Elia can finally be at peace. Did you not hear a word I said? Jon will die and you don't care at all. He scoffed. Of course you don't. Why would you, when he's not really your son at all? The words shocked her, he saw, so much so that she flinched as if he had hit her. You claim to love him, but now I see what this has really been. All he is to you, all he's ever been to you, is a tool for your black-hearted vengeance. How could you be so cruel? You manipulate him, a little orphaned boy whose only crime was loving you, at every turn so you can raise him like a pig to slaughter for your feast. He felt the sting of his burning cheek at the heaviness of her slap. I will not hear another word from you, she fumed. Not questioning my love for Jon. Not from a man who sat like a useless ox while I have spent years shielding him from the man's very wife. Not a man who has got Robert Baratheon's cock shoved so far down his throat, he will not even support his own kin over his friend who has humiliated him again and again. You are pathetic, Eddard Stark. You are a coward and you are no man at all. He watched her pacing around, her cheeks tinged red in hot rage, hoping his words had their intended effect. I promised to protect him and I will, even from you, Ash. She turned around suddenly. If you will not join us, don't get in my way. Once we finish with your king and his lions, all the North will bend the knee like everyone else. I would hate to see Jon have to harm his own kin, nor be torn in a war between people he loves like I was. The jab was supposed to hurt him, but he only felt sorrow at the dark look in her eye. What happened to you, Ash? He wondered helplessly. Just yesterday afternoon he could remember her lovely laugh at his bad jape, and now it was like she had turned into a different person. When did you turn into such a what? A hateful creature. She didn't even flinch at his words. I am only what you made me. You, your friend and the Lannisters. You really think I put up with everything I have for years now for what? For you, she jeered. For Jon, I thought, he replied, and for a moment a strange look took over her face before she steeled herself. He could see the wheels churning in her head, planning on what to do. But even he couldn't have imagined what she said next. Now that I know your intentions, I see no reason for Jon and Lyra to stay here any longer. They will be going with Benjen to Bear Island. He felt an iciness creeping around his heart. Was this her way of punishing him for refusing her? No. They won't, he stated firmly, eyes hard and unyielding. You will not be sending Jon and Lyra anywhere. They are Snows, not Starks, she threw back in his face. Do what you will with the others, but I am their mother and I will choose where my children go. You are also just my ward, in case you forgot. Not Lady of Winterfell. Oh, I never forgot that, my lord, she told him with the emptiest of smiles. Then you know you have no say in my decisions. And none regarding our children as well, lest I be generous enough to give you leave to. They are mine, and mine charge alone. She surveyed him closely for a minute before smirking. You think I couldn't do it still? It would be far simpler than you could dream of. Were I to, say, let it slip to Lyra that I intended for them to get to visit Bear Island but you refused, she would pester you till you had no choice but to give in. You know as well as I how much she has been asking to go out and get to see the world. What reasoning would you refuse her with? Or were I to tell Jon I wished for him to spend more time at his uncle's home and bond with the Mormonts, you know he would listen. You couldn't even leave this room if I willed it. He informed her crisply, calling for the guards to stand by the door just to prove his point. No, she tutted mockingly, not the great Ned Stark locking a helpless, innocent woman away in her cell under guard. How long do you think you could keep me imprisoned here? A day, a month, years. Even if you did, how long do you think you can keep them away from me? She challenged. You are right, you could do whatever you wished with Jon and Lyra, and me. I am only your hostage, it is true. But see, I don't think you would do something like that at all. Like I said, I know you, Ned, and whatever else you are a good man. She strolled right past the men confidently, knowing they would never touch her. That he'd never let it happen. You are not very good at bluffing. She apprised him before the clicks of her feet grew further and further away. For a moment he was tempted to send Jory to tail her. To have her under guard and watch every minute, to read through her letters and ensure she wouldn't get the chance to reveal a thing. But he stopped himself. He couldn't do as much forever. And there was no need, he told himself, watching her figure grow smaller. She wouldn't do it. He was not the only one bluffing. Even if she doubted the sincerity of his threat, which she assuredly did at least a little bit, even the chance of it being true would hold her back from revealing the truth. She would not risk Jon, not while she thought there was even the slightest chance the North would stay out of it. And whatever she was plotting, he would make sure she'd never get the North. He knew that much to be true of her at least. Once Ashura opened her heart to someone, she loved them unreservedly with all her being, no matter how it could hurt her. It was what he loved the most about her. And she'd never act as long as she had any doubts at all about Jon's life. He believed that with everything he was. He had to. Because Jon was far too devoted to ever disobey her, and if he did, Robert would undoubtedly proclaim war. And that thought terrified him to no end. Did you know, he boomed, bursting into his brother's quarters. Benjen looked up lazily. I know many things. You are going to have to be a little more specific than that, brother. Have you been a part of what Ashura has been planning? To put Jon on the throne? Ben eyed him for a minute. No. That was all. You don't even sound very surprised, he prompted. His brother shrugged. Ashura has so many wheels spinning in her head all the time, anyone would go mad before realizing what she's up to. She wants to tell him the truth when he turns 1 and 10. Ned revealed. Ben looked down and he realized his brother agreed with Ashura. The boy should know of her. Her memory deserves better than to die with us. Benjen said sorrowfully. Lyanna. He deserves to know. Promise me, Ned. He remembered. It was easy for Ben to say, Ned thought darkly. He wouldn't be the one Jon would never call father again if he knew. He pushed the thought away. This was about only his safety, nothing else. Do you not care about Jon at all? Don't tell me I don't care. Ben barked at him suddenly, angrily. What do you want me to say? Home. No one with half an eye would doubt how much Ashura loves Jon, as do you. If you want the truth, I don't care what Ash wants. I don't care what you want either. She wants to make him king in some half-baked attempt at revenge. You want to hide him away the rest of his days, all to protect your oath of a friend. The man who would not hesitate to kill our blood if he learned the truth. Some friend, he threw back his head in disbelief, and you have the audacity to ask me to side with you. He loved Lyon. He did not love her. He did not even know Lionel. It is you he wanted to love. The idea of being your brother forever. Ned took in the words, thinking perhaps they were true. I did not come here to discuss Robert. No, you didn't. You never do. Ben said suddenly cold, that's why you still agreed with father of the match to Robert after Lionel pleaded with you not to. As if father would have refused it on my word. You knew him as well as I. He wanted the match and he was not letting it go. And had he not paid for that already anyway by losing her? What do you want from me then? Ashura wishes for John and Leia to foster at Bear Island with you. He turned away, with no desire to see how Ben's eyes lit up at the prospect. I will agree to it, he conceded grudgingly. On one condition. You are not the only Stark, are you? Whatever Ashura asks of you, you must refuse her. Ben stared at him through narrowed eyes. My loyalty is where it has always been, to John. To our sister's boy. My nephew. If you send him to Bear Island, I will do whatever I think is in their best interests after considering what Ashura says. Not blindly follow your orders like some talking bird. Then they will not be going anywhere. Ned insisted firmly, I will not have you conspiring to put John on any throne. Sometimes, Ned, you have to realize you can't control everything. Sometimes, you have to let others decide their own fate. I thought you'd have learned that lesson already. I'll help John find what he truly wants in his heart, not what anyone else pushes him to. If he really wants to take the throne, I'll fight at his side. Unlike you, I don't care even a sliver for Robert Baratheon. Even a blind man could see he is an awful king. If John wants to remain Lord of Moat Cailin, I will stand by him. And if he just wants to run off to some corner of Essos and live his life in solitude, I'll follow him in that too. That's all I care about. Sometimes, I wonder if I'm the only one who does. He was sick of this. I am John's father and it is my decision. I will not budge on this. Ben shrugged. I will not either. If Ashura really wishes to send them, they will end up in Bear Island. He stormed out furious. Ashura Dane. Why would you, when he's not really your son at all? You claim to love him but all he is to you is a tool for your black-hearted vengeance. The words had hurt coming from him, as much as the last 3 words were true. She was self-aware enough to know how much her need for vengeance consumed her, there was no changing that. It was who she was now. But questioning her love for John, she thought outraged. How dare he? Sure, she hadn't at first. When Ned had come to Starfall, she had perhaps been intrigued and thought him a sweet babe. But of course she hadn't loved him, not like she did Lyra. She had cared for him because he was an innocent child with no one else to do it, and because he had suited her goals. For a brief moment, that made her feel guilty. But why should it? She may not have bore him but she had grown to love him more than she'd ever loved anyone in the world all the same. That is what matters. He's my son, she pushed the thoughts away forcefully. I love him as much as I do Lyra. I would die for him, I would kill for him. But would you give up your justice for him? Another voice asked and it sounded like Ned. And she felt herself unable to answer it. I don't need to, she finally hushed it. John will want it as much as I, he knows it is the right thing to do. And she would never ever let him come to harm while undertaking the task. What of it their argument had been words spoken in anger and what of it had been of the heart, she couldn't fully sort out yet. But she realized the reality of their positions clearly enough. I am what I am, Ned. Just as you are what you are. She had told him. And she had realized the moment she had said it, that it was the truth. All that mattered to him was his honor. He was Robert Baratheon's man through and he wouldn't betray him. He had no intention of supporting any kind of Targaryen restoration. He had declared for his king while little Aegon, the rightful heir, was still alive after all. It seems we will be on different sides of war once more, Ned. But this time, I will not allow you to take anyone away from me, she vowed. Robert Baratheon may as well be the realm's more fearsome warrior, but it wasn't like Dorne didn't have its fair share of great fighters to match him. There was Sir Archibald Uranwood, nephew to Lord Andus, who could match the usurper in both strength and size, and fought with a warhammer as well. Eri O'Hotter, captain of Prince Doran's guard, was as challenging an adversary as one could find, and there had even been word from Starfall in the last bird of a promising young swordsman emerging out of high heritage, Drold Dane. Finally there was Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper himself. He would move heaven and hell to avenge Elia, she knew, and not even Robert Baratheon would stand in his way. But Ned had been right that Dorne and the naval power of Moat Cailin along with its gold to fund the Golden Company wouldn't be enough. She had long counted on the North as part of her scheme, and losing it would be unimaginable. It was about more than sheer numbers. The books may forever name it Robert's Rebellion, but the truth was it may as well have been called Ned's Rebellion. Even those who wouldn't admit it out loud still had to acknowledge it was the North that had won the war. While the other kingdoms split among themselves, royalist against rebel, the North came as one. A single, united and fierce army led by the finest commander to bring down winter to the south before promptly heading back home again. Just the name of Ned Stark behind Jon would bring houses flocking to his banners, considering he had been the usurper's most compelling ally. It would be a sign of strength to Jon's cause. But without him, it turned into a sign of weakness. Those that were on the fence would stay neutral at best or join the Baratheons at worst. "Why should we fight for you when your own blood will not?" they would ask. No. She needed the North. Not the entire North perhaps, but just enough to change the tides of perception. So she had thought on what to do. Even if Benjen could draw some of the northern houses to Jon's cause without Ned's approval, she knew he would never do it. He would fight with Jon himself, but never attempt to break apart the North. Then there was Robb Stark. She knew how close the boys were, and it was clear he loved Jon as much as Jon loved him. And if Ned had ice running in his veins, cold and impassive as he appeared, Robb was the opposite. He was fierce and wild, unable to hide either his joy or anger from his face. She doubted he would ever let his brother march alone to war. But heir or not, he was only a boy and unproven in battle. Men wouldn't follow him. It was Ned Stark the North knew. It was Ned Stark they loved. She needed them to love Jon too. It was hardly a tall task, he was so easy to love after all. All that was needed was an opportunity. But that was the part that now filled her with dread. Benjen had offered to take him and Lyra to Bear Island for fostering for years now. But she hadn't been able to stand the thought of being apart from them despite how selfish it was. It would be the perfect way for him to build connections, with the Mormonts obviously, but also the rest of the North as he accompanied Benjen while visiting various of Ned's bannermen. Let them be dazzled by the impressive young man he was. Let him earn their respect. He could breathe easier in Bear Island too, being away from Catelyn and her cruel words and harsh looks. Perhaps, that was all it would take for him to gain the confidence he should have in himself, she thought hesitantly in a half-hearted attempt to convince herself. And if there were a time she could actually manage to find the strength to let them go, it would be now, while she needed some space to figure out what to do on her end now that all that she had been building for years had seemingly crumbled to the ground. "I need a new plan, and I could use some space away from them to do it." She knocked on a familiar solar. "Can we talk?" Ben nodded, letting her in. As they settled down, she took a deep breath. "About your offer. I accept. I will send Jon and Lyra to foster at Bear Island." He didn't seem surprised, and a doubt started invading her mind. "But I do wish for Jon to accompany you any time you travel to meet various of Ned's bannermen. Will you promise me that?" No, his firm response startled her. "What?" she asked, stunned. All she wished was for him to take Jon to meet with various lords, as he should. What was wrong with that? "You heard me. I will swear nothing of the sort, Ash." "Fine," she gritted out. "Then when you leave to discuss trade deals for Moat Cailin, at least. Considering it is Jon's seat, he ought to be present to hear deals made in his name," she insisted. "It is his duty, no more and no less. I am Castellan of Moat Cailin and I govern the land in his stead till Jon is of age. And I am not taking them to Bear Island to have them discuss trade deals or learn a lord's duties. They are children, so let them be children. Once I feel Jon is ready, and if he wishes it, only then shall I let him accompany me." That only confirmed her earlier suspicions. "I see your brother got to you first," she looked at him bitterly. Blood runs thicker, after all. I'd think you know me better than that after the past 8 years. Ben retorted. I'm just doing what's best for John. He's only 9. Let him enjoy summer while it lasts. Winter comes for us all soon enough. Ned told me what you plan, he revealed slowly, and she found she couldn't meet his eyes. You know I will fight for him without a single regret till my last breath if the day comes. Always. Benjen implored, but I'm begging you, for the love you hold for me as a brother, or if that's not enough, for the love you bear for John, please. Give him that choice. Let him decide what he truly wants. This is what he will want. You think you know my own son better than I do, she challenged. And she saw his face harden. I think your ambitions blind you, as much as Ned's fears do him. He shook his head. Send them to Bear Island, and I will keep them happy and safe, that I do swear. I will do what I think is best for them. I will not promise any more. She knew a dismissal when she heard one. She turned heatedly and marched out of the room. It hadn't been more than an hour of her stewing in thought when John burst into her room. I'm sorry, he pleaded. I'll work harder on my lessons, Mama. I promise. I won't miss them ever again, even if I have to skip training. Please don't send me away. She felt herself draw back at his words, temporarily uncaring of how word had already spread, not when she could make out the tiredness of his eyes and the paleness of his skin so clearly. Gods, what had she done? I really have pushed him too much, she realized. That truth shocked her, stunned her, scared her even. Ned and Benjen had tried to tell her, even Lyra, yet she hadn't listened. This isn't a punishment, John, she said softly. That you even think so, it means I haven't been doing my job as your mother properly these past couple moons. Could you ever forgive me? She asked him. He nodded so easily, she felt all that much worse for it. You know how much you mean to me, don't you? How much I love you, she whispered, pulling him into an embrace. I know, Mama, he replied with a bashful smile. I have been a little trapped in my own head recently. But that's no excuse. I should have realized I was demanding far too much of you than should have ever been expected. I'm so sorry. She burrowed her nose into his hair. King he may be, but he was a boy still. This was up to her to set up, not him. It had always been her responsibility. Let him prepare himself at his own pace, a normal pace, however long it takes. 10 years, or 20, it didn't matter how strong Robert Baratheon's rule got. Vengeance had waited this long, hadn't it? It could wait for him too. I won't ever put my interests over you, she vowed. Never again. It's all right. I know you just want what's best for me. She dropped her eyes to the ground gravely before trailing her thumb down his cheek with a heavy sigh. One day, my love, you will finally understand. I just want you to become who you were always meant to be. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't decipher, and a doubt she just had to voice came up. I don't understand, why did you never tell me that it became too much? That you needed to be let up a little? He looked to the ground. I don't know. I thought I could handle it. And I didn't wish to be a disappointment. You could never disappoint me, no matter what. Surely, you must know that by now. I know, but it would disappoint me. I want to fight, Mother. I want to learn to be a great swordsman. The best swordsman, he confessed to her a little reluctantly. And then Lyra and Arya kept asking me to play, and I thought I could do it all, but I should have just stopped training once I knew. She turned away at his admission, shutting her eyes with a grimace. If you really like training that much, she started grimly, you should train. You have to do what you must, but you should do what you like as well. You should always make enough time for that, she told him firmly, without care of how the thought alone made her hand shake. And I'm sure Bear Island has a wonderful master at arms too. His purple eyes quivered and he threw himself in her arms. I'm going to miss you so much, Mama. She clutched onto him tightly, wishing she could never let him go. No more than I will miss you, my sweet boy. Lyra's no. The castle had been buzzing with rumors for hours. Of how father and mother had a huge fight. Of how her and John were being sent to Bear Island to foster with their uncle. The only thing no one knew was the reason why. though one of the rumors even claimed it was father's way of punishing mother by never letting her see them again because he thought she was unfit to care for them. She didn't count that one though, because it sounded like one Lady Caitlin would start. Or at least that was what Leia told herself. Father wouldn't do that. He would never. He loved them. But what if he had thought so because of what she had told him of John's studies? If only she could just find him, she could assure him it wasn't true, that it was all a mistake. Mother was truly the best mother in the whole world, even if she could be a little bossy at times, and Leia knew she would never do anything that she didn't think was best for them. John had taken the news even worse than her, and more so when she had confessed what she had done. "You told father," he had turned to her in evident betrayal. "How could you, Leia? This is all your fault." She had looked at him taken aback. "My fault? I was just helping you. I didn't need any help. I was fine. I was handling it," he growled, "and now look what happened. They are sending us away. And mother and father are fighting now. You've ruined everything." She had tuned out the rest of his panic-filled words, finally understanding why he was so upset. He still hadn't let go of that stupid idea, she thought, annoyed. He could be as bad as Sansa sometimes, sticking his big head in the clouds and dreaming of true love and soulmates. "By the gods, grow up, John," she shouted. "There was nothing to ruin. Mother and father are not together, and they won't be ever again, no matter how much you want it. The only reason we came to Winterfell at all was because the king would have chopped her head off if father hadn't intervened. This isn't a song where they run off together and live happily ever after. Don't you understand that by now?" He had shrunk further and further back through her rant, and she could have swore she saw him blink back at her. Perhaps she had been a little harsh. "I'm sorry," she sighed abashedly, pulling him into a hug, and he melted into her embrace. "You're right, Leia. I don't want everything to change." He shook his head heavily. "What's going to happen to us if mother and father don't get along anymore?" The thought scared her too, but she couldn't tell him that. "Nothing will happen," she promised. "Father doesn't get along with Lady Caitlin, but nothing happened to Robb, Sansa, Arya or Bran." She decided to leave mention that Caitlin was still Lady Stark, and he had no choice, while mother was only his ward. But father wouldn't care about any of that, she assured herself. He had always loved all of them just the same. "If she wasn't there, do you think they would be together then?" he asked her hesitantly. Father still loved mother, Leia knew, and he was rather obvious about it. Mother was harder to read, but she thought it might be true of her too. "I don't know," she told her twin instead before smirking, "but if they didn't, I know who you would have chosen to live with anyway, Mama's boy." "And you would have chosen father?" "Of course, he's a lot less bossy." They were both grinning stupidly at each other now. "Whatever changes, it doesn't matter," she assured solemnly. "We will always have each other." "You promise?" he asked slowly, looking up at her trustingly. "Of course," she said without a second thought. "You and me, we are a team. No matter what." He smiled up at her truly while cuddling against her. "You are the best, Leia. Tell me something I don't know, little brother." "Ashara Dane. Maester Aemon is coming with you. Your lessons will continue." She looked at Ned, daring him to disagree. Smartly, he didn't. "But only 1 hour a day. Find some time to do something relaxing and enjoy yourself with your sister too." "I don't want to go. I don't want to leave you," he whispered, flashing those big sad purple eyes that made her want to pull him into her arms. "This is what's best for you, John, even if neither of us like it very much now. Oh sweeterling, I don't want you away from me either. But we will see each other again sooner than you know. It will be good for you to meet with some other houses and their lords. Stay close to Benjen and Daisy and you will be just fine." She pulled him in for a final hug and kiss before giving him an encouraging smile. "Go on now, your uncle is waiting for you. Let us know." She watched her twin drag himself down the hill to their uncle rather glumly. "I don't doubt you will find ways to enjoy the visit very much." Leia had tried her best to sport a look of innocence as her mother's smile turned toward her. "Try not to give too much trouble to your aunt and uncle, all right, love?" Mother leaned in closer, laying kisses all over her face, and Leia could see her eyes starting to glisten. "Is something wrong, Mama?" But she only shook her head mutely before pressing her face weakly into Leia's shirt. "It's just. I'm going to miss you and your brother so much." Mother finally confessed in a shaky whisper. She broke off, throat bobbing, and Leia didn't know what to say. Mother had clearly barely managed to keep herself together just long enough to send John out, knowing they might have never left otherwise. "We will visit whenever we can," she promised, and Mother rubbed at her eyes furiously. "Oh, don't worry about me, my darling," she sniffed with a watery smile. "I'll be perfectly fine. You just make sure that you take care of yourself and you have lots of fun. And always remember how much I love you." "I love you too," she returned, diving into Mother's embrace. Her warmth was intoxicating, and Leia realized suddenly how much she'd miss her. Despite what Mother had promised to appease John, she knew they wouldn't be seeing each other for quite a while, and she felt a pang of misery at the reminder. Suddenly she felt tears making their way down her own cheeks, and she couldn't stop herself from voicing her troubles with a gulp. "I'm sorry that I told Father," she blinked heavily. I am sorry I made you two fight. This is all your fault." Her twin's words popped in her head, and she leaned her wobbling face desperately into Mother's neck. She forced herself to be brave. "Why, you can be mad at me instead, if things will just go back to normal." She felt her voice break off in sobs before she could finish the offer. "No." Mother pulled her close. "No, Lyra, sweeterling. You listen to me. None of this was your doing. Not one bit. Do you understand that? What you did, standing up for your brother. You were right, and I am so proud of you for it. I'm always so proud of you." "What this is?" Mother hesitated, her cheeks still stained from her own earlier cry. "It is fate. It is the will of the gods. No one can change that." The words were relieving, but they saddened her too. She understood things wouldn't ever be how they were again. "In fact, I need you to keep doing that now more than ever. I need you to keep on being your sweet, lovely self and putting smiles on the faces of everyone you meet. John will likely have need of it too while you two adjust to Bear Island, I imagine." Mother breathed softly in her ear. "Will you promise me you will watch over him? You are his older sister, after all." Leia couldn't help but preen at the assertion. "I need my big girl to look after him and take care of him since I will not be able to. Can you do that for me?" "I will, Mama," she beamed always. 292 AC at Bear Island. The goodbye with their siblings hadn't been any easier, Leia thought. She'd miss little Bran the most, as fond as she'd gotten of her baby brother and the way he would curl himself around her leg and say her name with that tiny smile. Rob and John had gone off for a long couple minutes, returning with what looked suspiciously like tear stains on their cheeks. And Sansa had her sweetest farewell ready for Leia as always, though she found it funny how her younger sister would keep glancing back to make sure her mother would not show up in the middle. And then there was Arya. Leia had been sure the youngest of her sisters was going to burn down the castle herself, such was her fury at father and her mother for making her and John leave. Though if her little sister's shouts of "you can't have him" were any indication, it was more John than her. Her twin had taken the smaller girl aside, and whatever he had assured her in those hushed whispers, she had finally calmed down to angry tears instead. Their party of 9 departed not so long after. She and John were horsed alongside Father, Uncle Benjen, Jory, Kine, Wyl, Hwood, Desmond as they made their way north. It was such a gloomy ride, and the tension was so thick, Leia could have cut it with a knife. Once she had raced ahead of the others, just to lighten the mood, but that had only made things worse. Father had given her a look so frosty it had chilled her to the bone and chastened her more severely than he had ever before when they had finally caught up with her in a frenzy. The boat ride had been fun, especially for having been her first time in one, but it was the island itself that she loved. It was thick and green, the pines towering as tall as the sky and old oaks twisting into knots that she could already barely contain herself in anticipation of getting to climb on them. "John, look," she called out excitedly, pointing out the gushing icy waters from the falls running steeply down the hillside before splitting off into numerous little creeks. She saw his eyes go wide at the sight and she grinned. "We are going to have so much fun here." "Uncle Benjen." Pup. What is that in the distance?" She wondered of the black, stony hills. "They call those the Bear Caves," he said with a small smile. "Not a very original name, I know, but you can wager a guess as to why I'm sure." They could see bears. Leia made note to add that to the very top of her bucket list. Father had started running the guards through his plans when she saw Uncle Ben interject. "What need do they have for guards, Ned? I will double you. You're getting what you wished for, aren't you? Father snapped, then you can indulge this at the least, I'm sure, and their uncle went quiet. Why were both mother and father mad at Uncle Benjamin? It couldn't have all just been about John's lessons, could it? If she had known, Leia told herself for the 100th time as they rode in silence, she would have just kept her mouth shut. Perhaps it was the surrounding beauty of the island, or perhaps it was her own expectations, but once Mormont Keep, what Uncle Benjamin had informed them the Mormont's castle was called, had come into view, Leia felt her enthusiasm drop like a rock. It wasn't even a real castle, she scowled. She'd always imagined all castles to look somewhat like Winterfell was, larger than life, towering high with its majestic grey stone walls. She'd been disappointed enough with Deepwood Motte on their way here, but wooden and old as it was, at least it had been large enough to take up the whole hill. The Mormont's home on the other hand must have been no larger than Winterfell's great keep alone, built with stacked huge logs. "Is that my sweet niece who has grown up so?" she heard a voice question interrupting her thoughts. "Aunt Daisy," she squealed, jumping into the woman's arms. Her aunt appeared tall, lean and lanky to the eyes, but that was how people were fooled, she was strong as any man as well. Even now, she was twirling Leia around above her head with the strength of her arms alone. Leia noticed the carving right in the middle of the gate made of wooden posts. It looked to be a woman in a bearskin. She was holding a battle axe in one hand, and a child in the other which was suckling at her breast. "No proper lady, that one," Aunt Daisy smiled fondly, catching her line of sight, "but I always loved her." "I told you we have to rid ourselves of that awful carving, Jorah," she heard someone say right on cue, and her aunt's smile dropped. "It is an ungodly sight that's even gone to children's eyes now." "Lord Jorah and Lady Lioness of Bear Island," Daisy introduced. For a moment, Leia was taken aback. Jorah Mormont was, well, not very pleasant to the eyes. Not ugly perhaps, but it seemed he had hair everywhere except for his head, and he seemed to be at least 10 years older than father. Yet his wife Lady Lioness Hightower looked young enough to be his daughter, and she was beautiful. She was fair, with skin like cream, and golden hair, and she might have been the prettiest woman Leia had ever seen, apart from Mother of course. Mother was so beautiful, Leia thought she might as well have looked perfect at times. Like she was carved from stone. Thinking of her made Leia sad, but it also made her remember what Mother had taught her once, of how some lords view their daughters as nothing more than a political tool to further their house's position. She wondered if Lady Lioness's father had thought as little of her match. Whatever the case, Leia certainly would never marry anyone like that, no matter what he was a lord of, and no one would ever make her. "It is a pleasure to welcome you to our home, Lord Stark," the Lady of Bear Island greeted, "and Bear Island will be made brighter by your presence, young ones." Just about anything could make Bear Island brighter, Leia thought snarkily, glancing at the darkening sky. "Thank you for welcoming us into your home, Lord and Lady Mormont. It seems very welcoming and rather cozy," she offered sweetly instead. "We are most grateful to be receiving your hospitality, my lady." "My lord," she heard her twin echo. "We will do our utmost to honor you during our stay." Leia could have snorted. What her brother really needed in her opinion was to loosen up desperately. John was far too serious all the time. She had been introduced to the other Mormonts at dinner. Aunt Daisy's mother, Lady Mage, and her sister Alysanne, only 2 years her younger. They looked much the same, short, chunky and muscular, which surprised Leia at first since Aunt Daisy was tall, willowy and so pretty. She had also caught sight of a girl no more than a year older than her and John, one that shared her aunt's startling blue eyes. Daisy's younger sister Lyra Mormont. The girl was sitting with another sister who was perhaps 7 or 8, Jarell Mormont, and the last one who was younger than even Bran, Lyanna Mormont. Leia was tempted to introduce herself, but for some reason she found herself feeling unwilling to leave father's side. Dinner was a rather somber affair, in truth. And she felt an undeniable pull of dread the entire time, a reasoning for which she couldn't put her finger on till she heard her lord father's voice. "John." "Leia," he called out. She turned to face him, seeing her twin do the same. "It is past time I head back. Will the two of you walk with me to the dock?" Leia felt her heart drop. "Already," she pleaded with him. "Couldn't you leave on the morrow, father?" He only gave her a small shake of his head. "We will see each other soon," he promised. The next time I have business this side of the north, I will stop by for a whole day. She grasped his hand tightly, feeling John do the same on his other side. When they finally reached the boat, Leia felt father's beard tickling against her skin as he dropped down and laid a kiss to her forehead. "Father," she questioned. "What is it, Leia?" His grey eyes, just like her own, looked heavy. She looked back quickly at the men behind them before whispering in his ear. "Do I really need a guard to follow me around? You know I'm always careful." She put on her most innocent smile, the one that always had father give her that small grin he had special just for her, but this time it didn't work. Father only frowned. "I thought you liked WYL, didn't you?" he questioned. "Sure," Leia admitted grudgingly, he was her favorite of Winterfell's guards. Jory and the rest of them were so old, they never could keep a conversation with her. WYL was only 7 and 10, but they all said he was already the best sword in Winterfell, well, at least of the ones in the training yard. Father had to be better, of course, but he never joined in. Not that it mattered to her how good WYL was with a sword. All that she cared about was that he was young and fast enough to actually keep up with her, and that he'd never let her and Jon out to explore the island by themselves. Now that she thought about it, including Hood and Desmond, they were father's best men behind Jory, and he had sent all 3. At least she wasn't stuck with Desmond, like Jon was. He was brash and loved showing off his fighting skills, but apart from that he was so boringly single-minded about his duty he may as well have been a dead man walking. And lastly there was old man Hood. What he lost from his age, he seemed to make up with his head, always seeming to know exactly what they were getting up to. Why couldn't father send a guard like Fat Tom, she wondered with a scowl. He was always so easy to trick. Leia could have spun her words and excuses till he would have lost focus, or even better, she thought evilly, taken him to the kitchens and fed him till he forgot all about the fact that he was supposed to be watching her. "I just don't wish for one, that's all," she stated defiantly. "Take him back with you to Winterfell." Robb was the heir, he was the one who needed babysitters, not her. "WYL is your guard. I chose him just for you, and here he will stay," father ordered, suddenly stern. "And you mustn't try to trick him, child. He watches over you at my command." Leia felt herself bristle at the unfairness of it, but she stopped herself from arguing back. It might be the last she saw of him in moons, if not years, and she did not wish to part on bad terms. "As you say, my lord," she conceded, looking down at her boots. "I will just have to find a way to free myself of him on my own." Father stared at her for a long moment, and just as she started to wonder if he doubted her sincerity, he let out a strangled sigh confirming it. "What am I to do with you, sweet girl? You can be as stubborn and willful as my sister was when you wish it." Leia perked up at the mention. Father never usually spoke of Aunt Lyanna no matter how much she'd ask, but Leia knew he had always loved her more dearly than he had loved anyone else. "Though I suppose you could have got that from your mother too." His face turned sad, and she wondered if it was for her mother or her aunt. "You can love me for it," she grinned up at him impishly, and his expression lightened just as she counted on it too. "That I always do, child." Suddenly, she was wrapped in his arms and nuzzling herself against the crook of his neck. "I'm going to miss you, Papa," she whispered. "As I will you, Leia," he muttered lowly into her hair, "but it will not be all that bad. The next time we see each other, I imagine you will finally be the best rider in Winterfell as you've always wished." "I will be," she promised. "Jon Snow. Look at me, son." Jon didn't want to. If he looked, it meant he had to say goodbye, and if he didn't, perhaps father wouldn't leave. Still, he obeyed. Father's eyes were as sad as he'd ever seen them, as he sat on a knee, the grey of them peering into Jon's soul. "Winter is coming, Jon," father said gruffly, and Jon felt a shudder run down his spine. Winter is coming. The words had always seemed so foreboding. "You can sense it as well as I'm sure, because you are of the north. Do you know what it means? It means that there are tough times ahead, doesn't it?" Father's face crinkled into a somber smile. "It does. But the blood of the Starks of Winterfell runs through your veins as much as it does mine, and we endure. We always have. And sooner or later, even the longest winter will end and summer will return. It always does. Tough times don't last, John understood, but people tough enough to face them will. It will not be easy, but it is time for you to begin growing up. And as part of that, I trust my future Lord of Moat Cailin can look after his sister for me. I will, Father, he promised. Father shook his head with a hidden grin. Come on then, lad, he said, opening his arms wide, and John ran into them. Father's arms were safe, they were protective, and they were gone sooner than he wanted. John barely pushed back the tears threatening to erupt. You will always have me, you know, and your mother as well. No matter how far away you are, or what you decide, he said grimly while looking away. We, he corrected himself, are always behind you. What you decide. John wasn't sure what that bit had meant, but it was all that was running through his mind as he stood on the hill and watched his Lord Father seat himself on the boat, slowly growing farther and farther away. Daisy Mormont. The moment Lord Eddard Stark had departed the hall, his children trudging along faithfully behind him, she turned on Ben. What happened at Winterfell? Her question definitely took him by surprise. What? I said, what is going on here, she hissed. He finally seemed to find his tongue. Ashura agreed to let us foster the children. That's all, Dace. If that were really all, he wouldn't have ever had to say that's all, would he? She narrowed her eyes. Yes, after almost 2 years of you trying. Why now? And why are John and Lyra looking so miserable? So let's try that again, shall we, Benjen Stark? He winced at the use of his full name, as if he'd just realized the danger he was in. Ned and Ash had a fight. One big enough that word spread through the castle. Perhaps John and Lyra heard some of it, or perhaps they are just upset that they had to leave home. I don't know, he muttered irritatedly. About what? Does it matter? Does it? She looked at him in disbelief. What could possibly have been big enough to blow up to the extent where it affected them? Lyra especially. I've never seen anything faze that girl. He sighed. Ash wished to foster them, and Ned didn't. That wasn't it. Then why are they both upset with you? They also had a disagreement over John's lessons, he admitted reluctantly. They weren't very pleased that I took opposing sides to them. It wasn't the full truth, she knew, but she'd get nothing more out of him. Whatever happened, it doesn't matter, she finally said. John and Lyra are here now, and we will make sure they have everything they need. Lyra's no. The next morning, Aunt Daisy had taken her to show her where she would be having her lessons. You don't have a scepter here, do you? Lyra asked doubtfully. Septa Mordane was in charge of her sister's womanly education, along with the other girls in Winterfell. But Mother had never required her to join them. Lyra had a natural gift for courtesies as it was, and Mother didn't worship the Seven, so Lyra had only to tell her the same to get off those lessons. Instead, Mother had taken care of training Lyra herself, 3 times a week, and having her take up extra lessons with Maester Lewin once. There were times when she was stuck in particularly hard or boring lessons that she wished she had just chosen learning from the Septa, but having an entire extra day off was much too good to pass up. Oh, gods no. Aunt Daisy informed her dryly, we are a proper bunch of northern heathens up here. You will see. Once she had been seated, she noticed she'd been placed next to Lyra Mormont. Hey, she whispered brightly to the blue-eyed girl, I remember you from dinner yesterday. You know, our names are only 1 letter apart. She saw Lyra frown. No, they are 2 letters apart, she refuted. What? This governess must not be very good at teaching the girls sums, Lyra thought. Lyra and Lyra, even Arya would know there was only AR differentiating them, and she was only 5. Want to bet on it? Lyra asked, and she saw the other girl's eyes flicker with excitement. Lyra slowly turned her head, eyeing Wyl, who was standing dutifully outside the room. If I win, you have to show me all the ways you know out of Mormont Keep. All castles held secret passages, Lyra knew, and if she were to ever escape her guards she needed to know of them. Lyra blinked at her curiously, but ended up agreeing and adding her own claim, and if I win you give me your earrings. Her earrings. She understood why once she touched them. When she was 7, Lyra had decided bears were her favorite animal. Father had bought her a beautiful pair of silver earrings in the shape of a bear face. She had changed her mind about her favorite animal often after that, but never loved the gift any less. Deal. When she wrote out the answer, she saw Lyra had done the same, but compared Lyra instead of Lyak. That's how she had gotten to. They were at an impasse. "Well, which one does your mother call you?" the girl asked. "That should be the real answer since she named you." The logic was sensible, except for the answer that would come out of it. For a moment, Lyra was tempted to fabricate her response, but it was an open secret how Mother was the only person in Winterfell who wouldn't call her as she wished. Aunt Daisy could verify her answer easily, as could Uncle Benjen and John. Lyra, she admitted defeat with a pout. "Goodbye, sweet freedom," she thought longingly while handing over the jewelry. She started whispering something to her new friend when she heard a throat clear from behind her. "I see our newly added young lady is already causing trouble," the governess interrupted, and Lyra nearly sighed. From bad to worse. When their lesson had wrapped up, she realized she hadn't paid any attention to any of it, lost in thought as she was. Suddenly Lyra was standing at her side, sliding a scroll to her. "What is this?" she asked, confused. "A map with the passages out of Mormont Keep," she said matter-of-factly. "They are supposed to be a secret, but if you can't trust a Stark, who can you trust?" Lyra felt herself fill up with joy, and she pulled the girl into a hug. "Thank you. Thank you. If you have any other questions, I can always help." Lyra felt a grin take over her face. Just one, really. What does a governess even teach? Over the next weeks, she had gotten used to life in the Bear Island. Well, as used to it as she could. The meals, for one, made her wish for Winterfell often. Lady Lyness had bragged that Lord Jorah had hired a cook all the way from Old Town just for her, which sounded stupid to Lyak. They were paying him all that coin, but there was only so much even the best cook could do when all you had to work with are fish or venison. His stews and roasts turned out well, but she missed all the options they would have back home. Especially the sweets. When Lyra had informed her she had never tasted a cream cake before, Lyra couldn't believe her ears. How could anyone have truly lived without trying the treat at least one? And she hadn't figured out a way to make use of the secret passages leading out of Mormont Keep yet. Wyl seemed to have memorized her exact schedule, never giving her a moment of peace where she could sneak away to test them out. Still, Lyra and Jory made great company, and it was only when the former had questioned her about her twin that she remembered John. Her brother had wilted like a flower. She knew he missed sparring with Robb, and having the others to play with. But even more, he was miserable without Mother. She had a feeling his nightmares were worse without her too, with how sallow he was looking. She was supposed to look after him, and so far she had failed spectacularly so far. She had been so caught up with the Mormont girls, she'd let Mother down. "I'll change that," she promised. She had sought him that night, knowing he always used to go to Mother when he had trouble sleeping, only to find him sitting in his bed with a book in hand. "You're still reading?" she asked dumbfoundedly. "I thought after last year Mama had squashed it out of you." "I like reading," he frowned. He really must, she thought with a shake of her head. "Well, anyway, I was wondering, do you want to come sleep with me?" She saw him purse his lips. He was a little sensitive about that still, she knew. There was also the fact that before she had known how bad they were, she might have made fun of him for it just one little teeny tiny time. He probably thought she was mocking him. "I've had trouble sleeping too," she disclosed to him, not even having to lie. "It's a lot colder here than it ever was at Winterfell." She hadn't ever understood why they called the north a vast, bare wasteland in the south, until now. Admittedly, she could barely remember the last winter, she had only been 4 when it had ended. But in Winterfell, no matter how heavily they overstayed their welcome while having fun in the snow, they'd still always be a step away from the castle, where the moment she walked by those walls constantly being piped with hot spring waters, it was warmer than anyone could ever imagine wanting. And when she'd sip a cup of old Nan's sweet milk right after, so hot it could scald the roof of her mouth if she weren't careful, Lyra could have been convinced she was in heaven. Bear Island was certainly nothing like Winterfell in that way. It was the peak of summer now, and still it was far more brisk and frigid up here than she could ever remember experiencing before. She'd find herself curled up so tightly come morning every day these past weeks, that she often woke at odd times with aches and throbs from the awkward angles. "I know you used to cuddle with Mother to help you sleep when you couldn't. And since you are always warm, I could sleep well too. We could help each other," she told him brightly. He didn't look like he fully believed her, but he nodded slowly and she crawled in next to him. Lie, get up, her pillow told her. Shut up, she mumbled, only snuggling her face deeper into it. Wait, since when did her pillow talk? She awoke blearily while pushing her tangled hair out of her face. John, she whined. I was having the best dream. It had been something about horses, or at least she believed so. Her favorite ones always were. It's 10, Lie. You've slept for 12 hours, he quietly informed from under her. I've been awake for 2 hours already. Maybe she had dreamt of one eating annoying brothers. Irritation crept in her, that would certainly make her happy right now. Just 5 more minutes, she grumbled, nestling against him tighter to ensure he wouldn't get up. It's the best sleep I've had in weeks. I can tell. You have a little drool gathering right there. He pointed toward the corner of her mouth with a smirk, and that had been enough to get her up as she wiped against her face hastily. I don't know what you are talking about. You were kicking me all night too. Oh, and you snore when you sleep, he added unhelpfully, making her gasp. I do not. Take that back. Never, he cried with a snicker. Oh yeah, she upbraided him, well, you have feathers in your hair. Feathers, he blinked with the stupidest look on his face. Feathers, she thought wickedly, and before he realized what was happening she had already leapt on top of him, smacking down a pillow on his head. Or you will in a minute anyway. After numerous failed attempts to wiggle free, he made one last desperate bid to roll over and knock her away, but she had been prepared for that. She locked his knees with her legs and he collapsed in a conceding thump under her. Say it, she ordered, pressing the pillow down against his face. If you want me to let you go, say it. You are the prettiest, kindest, most elegant lady in all the realm, and you certainly do not snore, he wheezed out, and she picked herself off him satisfied. That's more like it. Thanks, Lie. He gave her a half smile. That was a first, she thought, mystified. He'd never thanked her for squeezing the stuffing out of him before. Anytime, little brother, she said sweetly, if you ever need a pillow to hammer your big head down to size, I'm your girl. No, I just meant. I slept well too. Good. She saw him sitting alone by the gate. Hey John, you want to come with me? I'm meeting Lyra and Jory by the creek. I'll be fine here. She gave him an unsatisfied look before taking a seat beside him. It will be more fun with you. Lyra, his voice was barely louder than the rustling leaves. You should go. It's all right, really. I don't want to, she told him stubbornly. You are my best friend, and I want to spend time with you. And Lyra wants you to join too. She does. She said she was curious about you. Lyra grinned, making him duck his head shyly. But if you don't want to join the others, it's okay. We can play something else. Just the two of us. He seemed to be contemplating her offer. I suppose it couldn't hurt. John's no. It had been 30 minutes, but he still couldn't tell if joining with the Mormont girls had been a good idea. They were nice and kind, if only a little too eager to question him. Did you really kill half a dozen Ironborn yourself when you saved your brother? Kill, he blurted, startled by just the suggestion. I've never killed anyone. He was only 9 still. Oh. Lyra replied, and if she was disappointed she didn't let it show. But you did beat them, didn't you? There were only 2. John admitted, and I didn't have any weapon with me to actually fight them. All I did was leap in their way when they tried to stab Rob, and then they just tried to escape once the sheet caught on fire. He saw the brown-haired girls rapidly digesting his story. You see, Jory, Lyra turned to her younger sister. Dace was right. He's modest too. He sent them running off without any weapons, not even a sword. He just turned fire into his weapon and beat them back while alerting the entire castle at the same time. Fire. Who would even think of that? That's so cool. Jarell exploded. What? That wasn't what he had said at all. Just roll with it. Lyra muttered under her breath when he made to interrupt. John found himself growing more and more comfortable with the Mormonts in the weeks that followed. The island was strangely peaceful. He'd grown fond of Lyra and Jory, and when they grouped together with Lyra it was almost like he had 3 sisters with him again, however much unlike Sansa and Arya they were. He knew Lia's favorite part was their weekly hikes across the bear caves, even if they had yet to actually see any bears. Lia was convinced that the route their aunt and uncle took them on was purposefully bear-free, thought that suited John just fine. He had no desire to chance a run-in with any hungry beasts. As much as he knew his sister had always loved seeing different animals, he thought perhaps the fact that it was the only time their guards were not with them was enough to satisfy her. "I thought we could make this our little activity. Just the four of us," Aunt Daisy had suggested the first week with a grin. He still remembered that first attempt hiking up that hill like it was yesterday. By the time they were halfway up, he could go no further, collapsing under a tree, while his twin hadn't even broken a sweat. "Come on, John. Lia had roused you want to be a great warrior, don't you? How can you be one if you can't even climb to the top of one little trail? Give your brother a break, Lia." Their aunt smiled. "He's faring better than your uncle, and he's supposed to be a renowned warrior. You girls are crazy." Uncle Benjamin had shook his head while crashing next to him. "Here, pup, have some water." John had accepted it gratefully. Thankfully, he could more than match his sister and aunt in any of their hikes these days. As enjoyable as they were, what John found himself loving the most were his training session with Aunt Daisy. She was the master at arms at Bear Island, and her style was as different from Sir Roderick's as could be. She had declared his fighting technique to be perfect, but frowned when he informed her he could barely beat Rob in more than half their spars. It took her one spar to figure out the problem. "Your form is perfect, but the moves you are trying to string together won't ever work for you," she had advised. "They are meant for larger fighters, which is why you still get beat when you try them on a larger opponent. You are small and lithe, John. Your greatest weapon is your speed. So use it." He heard his door open, interrupting his thoughts. "Still awake, are you, John?" he heard his uncle whisper after walking in to see Lia dozing off on his lap. For a little longer he smiled. Uncle Benjamin settled himself on the bed, gently lifting his twin's legs and slipping under them. "Something bothering you, pup?" Something was bothering him. Had been bothering him for moons now. "Do you believe in love?" he asked. "You are a little young for that, aren't you, lad?" Benjamin Stark grinned, "Though those Mormont girls do seem to love you." "No, Uncle Benjamin, not about me," he flushed at the teasing. He had been thinking about mother and father. He remembered his twins' words. "They are not together, and they never will be, no matter how much you want it." But John had seen it. That night, years past on Mother's Name Day, he had seen how tenderly father had tucked her in and laid a kiss on her forehead. If that wasn't love, what was? He shook his head. "I just wanted things to go back to how they were." "But they never will they?" Uncle Benjamin gave him a grim look. "No, son. They never do." John saw him hesitate for a moment before continuing on. "During the rebellion, I lost my father, my brother and my sister. So many people I loved. I was 4 and 10 then, still a boy in truth, but it was hard to get over. When something you held so dear just breaks. How did you deal with it?" He smiled. "With love, of course. Your mother came to Winterfell, 2 babes in her arms, and then she placed you in mine. And I felt like I found a purpose. That's what you always say, isn't it? That for everything that turns worse, usually something else turns better." John looked down at Lia in his lap, just as she let out a cute little snore. He remembered how red her face had turned when he had informed her that she did just that. The thought made him smile. And he found in that moment he did want it. To be the Lord of Moat Cailin. He wanted it more than anything. "We will always have each other," his sister had promised him. How else could he take care of Lia as his father had asked? How else could he help give mother the life she deserves? "You can't control others, or what happens around you," he said thoughtfully, "but you can control yourself. I can't change what's already happened, but I can change what's going to happen. It's time to grow up," father had said. "I just want you to become who you were always meant to be," he remembered mother's words. "I'll be the greatest lord there ever was, one day," he promised, his voice cracking despite himself. "I will turn Moat Cailin into somewhere so grand the bards will sing of it for the rest of time. And everyone would be permitted. No matter how poor or rich, no matter what gods they followed, highborn and low will all be welcome alike for as long as they need it. A safe haven. Something permanent. For that was what Moat Cailin was. It was hope, it was his claim to his own power, and it was his chance to fulfill his every desire. Benjen Stark. He saw Jon staring out of the window intently for a long minute. It's a dark night, he pointed out. Darker than it ever seemed in Winterfell. Jon agreed. And Ben looked down. What more comfort could he possibly offer that wouldn't sound like empty platitudes? But that's all right, Jon continued softly, and he saw the boy start to shake. They say the brightest stars are born on the darkest nights. And one day, uncle, I'll be the brightest of them all. Jon turned to look at him. Will you help me? And Benjen found himself blinking hard. He looked into the boy's violet eyes, but in that moment he saw Lyanna so clearly in his determined gaze. I will. 292 AC at Winterfell. Ashara Dayne. She shut the door behind her and sank to her knees, her head leaning back against the door. She found herself unable to stop the bitter tears from falling freely down her lashes. My sweet babes. She'd lost both of them. Just thinking about it was crushing her inside. But there hadn't been a choice to make. Jon needed this to beat the Lannisters and Baratheons, and that was far more important than just her feelings. Elia had to feel the pain of her little boy being murdered right in front of her, she reminded herself. Little Aegon's brain smashed right in front of her, his blood coating his murderer's hand when he forced himself upon her. What was Ashara's own plight now compared to that? The rage coursing through her at that made the pain only a little easier to bear, if at all. She was growing lonely already, and her prison of a castle seemed all that more vaster than it already was without them. Auntie Ash, she heard a voice call from behind her door. She jumped up, wiping at her cheeks, finally opening her door once she'd established she looked presentable enough. Arya. What's the matter, sweeterling? Do you remember Jon talking with me? The youngest of Ned's daughters asked suddenly. Of course she did. Jon had been the only one who had been able to curb her shouts of rage. The wolf's blood indeed. I told Jon how much I was going to miss him, and he said he was going to miss me more. He said that when he was sad, he always liked listening to your stories. The reminder nearly sent her to tears again. That hearing about Starfall and Dawn made him feel better, and he thought it would work for me too. So could you tell me some too? I could surprise Ned with one in my next letter. Ashara understood in that moment what Jon had truly done, and she felt herself washed over in a rush of emotion. Her thoughtful, little boy. He had known all along, she realized. Known how lonely she would be after he and Lyra had left, despite her best attempts at hiding it. So he had convinced his sister to keep her company while they were gone in a bid to help her loneliness as much as Arya's sadness. I would love to, Arya, she smiled. By the time we are done, you will know more of Starfall than Ned Dayne could even dream. Notes. Another chapter is in. Enjoy. A tough chapter for many characters, which can be frustrating, but we got the chance to really define some future motivations for different main characters too. Thanks to everyone for reading or any other way you interact with this story. As always, I love hearing all your thoughts and suggestions, and I appreciate all the support I've gotten so far. Chapter 9, Weepersburn. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. 294 AC at Bear Island. Jon Snow. Clang. Jon was driven back on his heels from the merciless hammering, one powerful stroke after another. His arms had gone numb long ago from the shock of impact, and it was desperate adrenaline that still kept the edgeless sword in his hand, though it only seemed to be growing heavier with every passing moment. I can't do this, he thought as he staggered back, head ringing from the force of the blow. They were too strong, too large, and their weapon heavy enough to carve in his chest, unlike the swords he was used to facing. He rolled away, heart pounding, just as the ground he had been in moments earlier uprooted violently. Another hit to his quilted leather coat and he was done for. Use your speed, Jon. His aunt's voice drilled in his head. Your speed is your greatest strength. As her next strike came down at him, he moved inside instead of away and sidestepped out of the way of her mace rather than meeting it, sending the butt of his sword hard into her stomach. She gasped in pain as she went down to her knees, sending the mace crashing down to the ground. John stepped forward worried. Had that hit been too hard? Aunt Daisy, he questioned hesitantly. She moved suddenly, pulling him down with her and playfully mussing his hair. That was amazing, John, she grinned. If I didn't see it with mine own eyes, I would hardly believe how fast that last move was. I blinked and you went from 5 feet in front of me to at my side. Daisy Mormont shook her head before marveling. Give it some years yet and we will turn you into the finest sword in all the North. She turned to their audience, suddenly serious. You see that, girls? That is how you take down a larger opponent. I don't want to hear any more excuses. Big or little, everyone falls the same when you put a sword through their chest. Lyra and Jory were itching for their shot at trying it out for themselves, but his twin was just pouting in boredom. Lyra had never had any interest in fighting of any kind, not with a bow or sword or knife, despite the fact that mother had always allowed her that freedom. She had claimed it would mess up her delicate hands, the idea of which always made John smile. And to think she used to call him princess. Still, Lyra came to watch if only because it was the little time they were free of their guards. Arya would have loved it here, John thought. She had always wanted to learn to fight, his fierce little sister. John tried not to mention that fact too much in his letters, unwilling to make her feel any more left out than she was. He had a feeling she did much the same by passing over details of what games their siblings were playing without them back in Winterfell. Want to try your luck with me, John? A crooked grin turned his way. Ailey Mormont. Aunt Daisy's sister, younger by less than 2 years, but different as could be to the eyes. His aunt was pretty and lanky and sweet, always showing off a shy smile, while Alysanne was short, gruff and chunky. John could never doubt they were sisters though, not after being on the receiving end of spars with them. They both fought with the same style, relentless, punishing and with a mace heavy enough to crush through plated armor like parchment. John always came away from his sessions with either sister stiff and sore, and with a litany of bruises awaiting him when he woke the next day, which was just the way he wanted it. He would never get any better going up against Lyra and Jory or any of the others here who were his age. It had taken only about a month for his aunt to realize the same, and he had been training with the eldest sisters ever since. Most matches he gave as good as he got, or at least he thought so, but not this one. He had exhausted himself with Aunt Daisy and Alysanne had taken full advantage, pummeling him down within minutes. He felt someone playfully bump against his side after he walked out of the arena embarrassed and aching. You actually beat Dace. Lyra praised. I can't remember the last time I saw anyone do that. John felt a roaring warmth at the compliment. He had improved leaps and bounds from when his aunt had started practicing with him, something he would have done even if she hadn't bothered to teach him any new techniques. John had spent tireless moons learning how to actually string together moves he already knew properly, and it had done wonders for his ability just as she had advised. Sometimes he found himself loving the theory more than the actual fighting. The way it just clicked when he chained a Viper beheading strike, a speed move, with a braking press, a power move, and watched the shift take his opponent off balance as he knew it would beforehand. He could cringe now remembering how he would throw himself over and over again at Rob with moves that didn't relate at all, like he had been blindly ramming into a wall this whole time instead of climbing the ladder to get over it. She was going easy on me. John replied truthfully with a shrug. She would have split me in half if she had put any real power into her hits. His eyes landed on the heavy basket in her hand and Lyra's gaze followed him. What are you looking at, mister? Someone has to catch all that food you devour daily, she growled jokingly, poking his stomach with an accusing finger. How thoughtless of me, he grinned. Would you care for my help then, Lady Lyra? It is the least I can do to make up for my monstrous appetite. His offer made her smile. Are all you Starks so charming, or is it just you? She teased. The Stark twins. That was what Lyra and her sisters had taken to calling them, and John didn't think he could ever get used to it no matter how long he stayed here. Why do you keep calling us Starks? He finally asked, unable to stop himself. You know we aren't Starks. You are too, she argued. Your father is Ned Stark, isn't he? He acknowledged, but our mother is a Shara Dane. We are bastards. You both have the blood of the Starks, the kings of winter for thousands of years past, so that makes you Starks too. That is all that matters. She seemed to be pondering over something, before leaning in close. Let me tell you a secret, Lyra whispered slyly. My mother never married her bear, so if you really think about it, I'm as much a bastard you are. Fathered by bears, Lady Mage always claimed of her children with a crooked smile. Mormont women shape change into bears to find mates in the woods. As much as he wished to say she was joking, he couldn't be fully sure. John had never seen a shape changer in action before, but he had witnessed a skin changer. Once when she was losing in a race to a grown rider, he'd watched Lya's eyes glaze over just as her white stallion burst forward to victory with an extra gear of speed. I slip into her sometimes, his sister had admitted with a casual shrug when he had questioned her. Old Nan had told them how feared skin changers were even in the north, how if you slipped too often the beast could change the man just as much as the other way around, yet Lya always seemed the same as she usually did, if only a bit too open with how she flaunted the ability. Then again, his twin had been riding Winter since she could barely walk, and horses had to be fairly tame as far as beasts went. John had no doubt trying to do the same into strange and wild animals would be far less innocuous. But if skin changing was real, perhaps shape changers were too, and perhaps they were not all evil like the tales made them out to be. Of course the alternative scenario, which was much more probable, was that their father was just a man Lady Mage did not wish to wed nor whose name she wished to bring to light. Regardless of which it was, Lyra was right. They were technically all bastards too, yet they all proudly carried the name Mormont and no one paid any mind at all. It was an observation he had made of various houses in the north. Given how isolated and sparse the land was, many groups kept their own quirks and customs which no one else really cared to oppose. The Mormonts were no different, a small and poor house who up here in Bear Island were left to pretty much do their own thing unbothered. And if by chance anyone did think less of them for it, they were smart enough to know not to openly say so in fear of the she-bear's maces. Shall we go then? Lyra questioned, tossing him a spear. Lya and Jory are already by the stream. John was quite good at spear fishing. Not as good as the girls were of course, but good enough to give them competition all the same when it came to who could get enough for dinner the fastest. Still, he always lost, which meant he had to help with the cooking, and given the way they would stand and watch him work every time, he was beginning to think just maybe the Mormont girls were conspiring with Lya to do it on purpose. Poor boy. Jory joked. Left to prepare meals with the women, I bet you'd never have suffered such a fate in Winterfell. Can't be helped, Jory, he shot back between skinning the fish. If I didn't do it, we would all have to taste your cooking and that would be good for no one. He wasn't even wrong about the matter, none of the three of them could prepare a meal worth its salt. I never would have thought the Starkling would have such a tongue on him. She turned to her sister with a grin. You remember him when he came here, don't you, Lyra? Who could forget? Lyra smirked. Dace had us all fooled into thinking he was a sweet little lamb, and now we find ourselves stuck with a big bad wolf. And Lya never even thought to warn us, she tutted. His sister shrugged gleefully. You know me girls, I love a good prank. John felt far more like a lost little lamb than anything else when the three of them took to ganging up on him, which only seemed to encourage them. His twin, in particular, took every chance she could to embarrass him ecstatically now that she had support. Back in Winterfell, Arya had always been far too loyal to ever side against him, and Sansa too afraid of looking uncourteous. Daisy Mormont. We have John to thank for the meal today, don't we? She asked as they sat down for dinner. Thank the gods for that, her mother grinned crookedly. Though the boy's future lady wife isn't likely to thank us for it. You will be both prettier and better in the kitchens than any of those southern maids. They won't know what to do with themselves. What you need is a northern girl, lad, and I've got a few daughters I'd be willing to marry off in due time. To his credit, John's blush was far less red than it had been the first time her mother had mentioned something of a similar effect. Leave him be, mother, she scolded. My nephew is far too young to be worried about girls. It's only swords that are catching his eye at this age, not learning where to sheathe them. Daisy couldn't help but add cheekily, earning a round of laughs at the poor boy's expense. Lady Mage, her niece, pleaded sweetly, would you tell us a story of our Aunt Lyanna? Father never would, and neither will Uncle Benjen. Ben wouldn't even talk of Lyanna with her, Daisy thought, glancing at her husband who was promptly staring down into his bowl, and they'd been wed for over 4 years now. At first, she'd put it down to his way of coping with the grief, but she knew him too well to believe that anymore. Something didn't add up. What exactly that was though, she had yet to figure out. Want to know about Lady Lionel, do you lass? The she-bear declared in thought. I remember the first time I laid eyes on her. We were heading to Winterfell for a feast. This one was only a babe in my arms, then her mother said, pointing to her, and Daisy realized she'd never heard this tale. And just as we were nearing the castle, we realized we had no idea where we were. The Wolf's Wood, as it happened, at a spot only a 10-minute ride from Winterfell. But as Gia, who was Lord of Bear Island back then, and I were arguing about which way to go, this little girl pops out of the shrub. Skinny thing she was, dirt and mud staining her cheeks, but with the most beautiful tangled curls I'd seen. Prettier curls than John's. Lia interrupted teasingly, and Lady Mage snuck out a laugh. Looked nearly about the same as your brother's, as it was, come to think of it. And she had pulling grey orbs, just like yours. Couldn't have been older than 7. Where are you looking to go? She questioned us with all the courage of a girl twice her age. And when we told her we were looking to reach Winterfell, she smiled this beaming smile and walked up with a blue winter rose, one she had been digging for the past hour, and handed it to me, asking if I thought it was as beautiful a flower as she thought it was. Before I could even respond, she continued on, that's my father's castle. I can take you there. But it was never that easy with your aunt. She grinned over at us playfully and challenged us, if you can keep up with me, that is. And the gods as our witness, we couldn't. She rode that same pale horse you do now. Winter, her niece filled in excitedly. Yes, Winter. That's the one. Daisy wondered briefly if Lyanna Stark had also thought of the winter is coming, in first place quip, every time she won a race, as her niece loved to say. And we only reached the castle by following the trail the damned beast lay behind. But there was your Aunt Lyanna standing at the entrance with a cocky smile, her brother at her side. Your Uncle Ben was 4 or 5, perhaps. And when we approached, the boy got all excited. A baby. I love babies. What's her name? Oh, Uncle Ben. Lia squealed, that's adorable, and Daisy felt her face grow hot. She'd had no idea that had ever happened. Daisy wondered briefly if Ben had even remembered that when they met on the Iron Islands. He had a small smile on his face, staring into the fire, but otherwise gave nothing away. I'll just have to ask him tonight, she resolved. Oh, stop that, Ben. Lady Lyanna scowled. You know that's not how to properly greet our guests, and none of the poor babes want to see your ugly face. They are just the only ones who can't tell you so. It was all silent for a moment before we all couldn't help laughing, even my grumpy, short-tempered, stubborn brother, who hadn't so much as smiled in years. That was Lyanna Stark for you, able to put a smile on every face she met. She was our winter rose, that she-wolf. Wild, lovely, larger than life, and gone before her time. Stolen, raped and killed by the last dragon, she thought, and she supposed the others had as well, as the mood in the room dulled considerably. She frowned, noticing that her husband had gone suddenly uncomfortable and fidgety. Something that would not have been picked up on had she not known all his quirks so well. What was up with him? She sounded amazing. Lia muttered quietly, and Daisy could only agree. Hullen said she was even better on a horse than me, the girl continued, doubtful, as if she couldn't imagine the possibility. The she-bear bared her teeth in a smile. Lady Lyanna was the best rider I've seen. She may as well have been a centaur. Only your Uncle Brandon could ever come close to matching her. I want to be a centaur too. Lia claimed, eyes glimmering. And father said I was the best rider he's seen. Daisy had never gotten to see Lady Lyanna ride, it was true, but she was hard-pressed to imagine how anyone could beat Lia on horseback, at least anyone of age with the girl. The expression "one with the horse" never seemed to fit anyone better. Jon Snow. Jon couldn't take his mind off the story that Lady Mage had told at dinner of her visit to Winterfell. Aunt Lyanna sounded so much like his own sisters, so beautiful, wild and free. The thought of her being kidnapped and raped by the prince, it made him unbearably sad. How she had offered flowers to Lady Mormont in the story, it made him think of kind, ladylike Sansa, who would take him to pick all the flowers of her favorite colors from the flower beds outside the castle. How she had dug her way through the muddy dirt with a grin and no care in the world what she looked like. That was his lovely Arya, skinny as a tree branch with her scraped knees and tangled hair. Hearing of the way she had grinned up and playfully challenged the guests to a race on horseback, and how she teased Uncle Benjen, it sounded eerily like what Lia would do, his mischievous, compassionate twin. Poor father and Uncle Ben, He couldn't imagine losing any of his own sisters like that. The story made him think of his Uncle Arthur too. John had asked Mother once how Uncle Arthur could have partook in something so awful. He was good, wasn't he, Mama? He had pleaded with her to agree. How could he have just stood back and watched when he knew it was wrong? He was, sweeterling. She had told him before, hesitating briefly. No one really knows what happened between the prince and your Aunt Lionel. In the north, many say she was kidnapped, but in the south they say they fell in love and ran away together. Whatever the truth of it was, Uncle Arthur swore a vow when he became a Kingsguard, to always obey. It would have been his duty to do so, and he was a dutiful man. He had sworn to protect the innocent too, John had wanted to argue. It had confused him. Wasn't doing the right thing more important than keeping an oath? That was what Mother had always told him after all. To do good, John, you have to be good. She had taught him. And you, little one, must always do what's right no matter what. So why did doing otherwise when it was your duty make it all right? But when he had gone to Father with his doubts, he had only supported Mother's sentiment. He had asked Father why Sir Jaime was condemned as the Kingslayer when the Mad King was evil. How could killing a man like that possibly have been a bad thing? He swore a sacred oath to obey, protect and keep his king's secrets. A man's word must mean something, John. Or there is no point to any of this, if all you have left is lies and mistrust, the Lord of Winterfell had insisted. His father's words did make sense, he thought. If you didn't keep your oaths, why should anyone trust you? And if no one trusted you, no one would listen to you, so you may as well not be a lord or king at all. But something about it still bothered him. Father. John frowned. What is it? Knights swear to protect the innocent, don't they? They do. So shouldn't they have helped Uncle Brandon and Grandfather? They were innocent. Father turned sad at that, but he shook his head in disagreement. They are Kingsguard, son. Their vow to their king must always take precedence over any others. Just as a lord has duty to put his vows to his people over his other vows. But they said the Mad King told Sir Jaime to bring him his father's head. John didn't like Tywin Lannister, not after all Mother had said he'd done, but he was still Sir Jaime's father. How could anyone listen to an oath like that? Would you kill me if King Robert told you to? Or if I joined the Kingsguard, would you expect me to fight you if he told me to? The question seemed to startle his father. There may come a time when we are forced to make hard choices. Honor would demand that you face me. John had only looked at him horrified. How could Father ever expect me to raise a sword to him? But Father had always chose his honor, no matter what. Father gave him a grim look and a pat on the head. But let me tell you something else, son. You and I, we are part of a wolf pack. And here in the north, we know the importance of family more than most. When the snow falls and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies but the pack survives. So no, I would not expect you to choose honor over blood. He had let out a sigh of relief he hadn't known he was holding. I don't know what reason Sir Jaime had for stabbing his king in the back, he had continued. Perhaps it was a good one, a reason he considered worth it. But I do know that when he broke his oath, no matter how much good he thought it did, he should have accepted punishment for it as well. The war was over when the Lannisters stormed and sacked the capital. Jaime Lannister stood by and watched as his king did many things, as was his duty, but he continued serving his king when serving was safe. Then he chose to do what he did for whatever reason, only when he had nothing to lose, and he never paid the price. A man like that can't be trusted. Your word is your bond, and if you want people to respect and trust you, you must keep it. John had finally decided, but if you needed to break one you could, for a reason you found acceptable, such as for kin, as long as you were willing to pay the price. John prayed for his Aunt Lionel and Uncle Arthur's sakes that Mother's words had been true and she had run off with the prince. Uncle Arthur wouldn't have stood for it otherwise, he told himself. He had sworn an oath, but he would have considered the price of breaking it worth it for that surely. John knew he would have. Ready for tomorrow, John? Uncle Benjen poked his head through the door, interrupting his musings. We leave at first light. As ready as I'll ever be. Good. I'll let Desmond know to fetch you. They were headed to the last hearth, the seat of the Umbers. and he was nervous given that John Umber was the last High Lord in the North that he had yet to meet over the past 2 years. John had seen Lord Eddard deal with his lords many times, but doing so for himself, he'd found, was something else entirely. Whatever their differing personalities or requests, his father dealt with all of them using a cool courtesy till he bent them to his will. But John wasn't their liege lord, nor his heir. However much they respected his father's name, he would never one day command over them, never rule over them, for the same tactic to work for him. John was but a first among equals at best and an unproven one at that, and they owed him nothing but a meeting of courtesy. The Mormonts had been the first and the easiest. They had trees aplenty, and thick bare firs, a known luxury item to the east. John had secured not only that deal, but also asked Lady Lyness for advice when reaching out to her father, Lord Lytton Hightower. She had agreed to help and to his surprise gone even further, sending her own letter, personally sealed, in addition to his own. It had felt a little awkward of an ask in truth, like he was taking advantage of his familiarity with her and the Mormonts as a whole, but he hadn't had a choice. Not really. The crown jewel of Moat Cailin was its western port, and the most important connection it could provide was joining the north to Old Town, the wealthiest and second largest city in all the kingdoms. Moat Cailin's success hinged on acquiring that connection. After that, Uncle Ben had arranged that he meet some high lords who he believed would be easier for John to handle while getting a feel for what to do, like the jovial Hornwood and Glover, and the quiet Lord Sewin. All of them had welcomed and honored him as Ned Stark's son till their friendliness made him uncomfortable. They had requests too, and were no less sharp at the negotiation table, but they had liked him well enough and had clearly been impressed with his planning and character. Perhaps it was only a way to grow close to his father and brother, their future lord, through him, but he had found the entire event had gone as smooth as could be. The Hills clans had taken to him quickly as well. He hadn't even needed any courtesies or words to bring them over. Just honoring them by supping together and sparring with their sons had been enough to win their hardiest mounts in trade and the rights to mine for metals at their mountain sides. Mentioning that his twin was the namesake of their grandmother, Lyra Stark, who was half a Flint of the Mountain, hadn't hurt either, he thought. Nor had the knowledge that his little sister Arya was named for said great-grandmother, Arya Flint. After that it had gotten a bit tricky. Lord Marndale hadn't seemed very inclined to deal with him, however heartily and pleasantly as he had greeted them, nor had Lord Bolton, who was persistently silent and brusque, until he had let it slip to each that he was also dealing with the other. Mother had always taught him everyone has a weak point, and getting past it was just a matter of finding what it was and offering some common ground. Both Bolton and Marndale shared a border and numerous disputes, but it was their struggle for being the most powerful house in the north behind the Starks that had triggered their cooperation, however grudgingly, unwilling to chance getting left behind. He could sense neither had been particularly happy with him for it, nor did they really like him, but by the end they at least respected him for his guile. John was particularly thankful that was over with. He had found the dread fort creepily quiet and its lord even more so, as if everyone who could talk had already been sent to that room. Old Nan said they hung the skins of their enemies in, and the visit had almost frightened him as much as his nightmares used to. Then there was Lord Rickard Karstark of Carhold. He and his sons hadn't looked much like any Stark, despite their once common blood. They were big and fierce men with thick beards. Lord Harryon had been courteous, and Lady Alis, who was about his age and he remembered meeting once in Winterfell, had asked him about Robb only a half a dozen times. But Lord Rickard had seemed perpetually unimpressed with him, and John hadn't been able to find what made him tick. That was, up to the point John had asked to recess from their negotiations to pray in his godswood. He had seen the man's eyes light up and only delighted in the following conversation of how the gods would curse their southern Lady Stark's false gods who she had dared to sacrilegiously bring with her into the heart of the north. John had made sure to remind the man that his mother worshipped the old gods alone, unlike Lady Stark, and had taught him and Lyra as such. Half crazed of his gods that he may be, Lord Karstark had come around to John's side if only doubtfully. Lady Dustin had been the most recent, but she hated him, no matter what he said or did. She held thinly veiled contempt for Uncle Benjen, and just the mention of his father's name had angered her. All hidden behind false smiles and welcoming words, of course. Uncle Benjen had prepared him beforehand, explaining her prickly character and her inability to let go of a grudge, and how she had been half in love with his Uncle Brandon, who their grandfather had betrothed to Lady Catelyn. Lady Barbari's father had been hoping to wed her to father, before Uncle Brandon's death had ruined that. John decided not to mention Lord Eddard certainly wouldn't have married her even if he hadn't had to marry Lady Caitlin. She had instead been married to father's friend, Lord Dustin, who had fallen at the Tower of Joy. Valiant Ned Stark had time to cozy up to your mother and bring back his sister's bones, but me. All I got was my husband's horse. John felt some pity for her plight, but he couldn't find it in him to have too much sympathy for her, not when she was so bitter about it. His own mother had suffered far worse, she had her heart broken, her own brother killed by the man she loved, and she had never got Uncle Arthur's body back to bury either, as was custom in Dorne, only his sword. Despite it all, she had never once had a negative word to say of father to him or lie. She had never let her pain control her. She rose above it, as high as the stars, just like she always claimed, and he admired her all the more for it. That was why I loved him, she had comforted John once when he was a child and had asked tearfully how he could have done that to her. Your father always does his duty whatever the cost, no matter how hard. And a good son must always keep his father's word. Lord Ricard had promised his son would wed a daughter of Riverrun and make her Lady of Winterfell. If your father had done anything else, he would have spat on his father's word, his house's honor, and he was never that kind of man. Ned Stark is a man who always puts his duty above himself, and it takes a rare man to sacrifice his own wants to do so. It was just fate, little one, no one's fault. Perhaps it was fate as she had said, but he knew it was also tragic. John loved father with all his heart, but he had swore that day he would never do the same. John promised he would always do what was right in his heart, no matter what duty he was forsaking, and if he had to face the consequence for that choice he would do so gladly, even if that meant his death. Father had kept his own honor, kept the honor of his house intact, no matter how difficult it had been for him, but what of his mother's honor? Had he even given that a second thought, what he was forcing her to sacrifice? How could that ever be right? To force another person, a person you care for, to suffer so much pain and hurt for yourself, no matter how honorable the intentions. It was wrong, John told himself. It was wrong what he did to her. If he ever loved a girl as much, he'd marry her, no matter how selfish he was being. Maybe that meant he just wouldn't ever be as great a man as father was, but he decided that he could live with that. John did note Lady Dustin didn't seem to like Caitlin Tully any more than he did, but unlike with Lord Karstark, it did little good this time. It was ironic they didn't like each other, John thought, considering most of the reason both women hated him was his Stark looks. Perhaps next time they could bond over it. I'm no Stark, my lady, he had tried, but she had seen through that quick enough, especially since he had brought an actual Stark with him. But he couldn't fault his uncle's presence. Whenever John had misstepped during his visits, which he had more often than not initially, Uncle Benjen had stepped in like a blessing from the old gods themselves. He had built rapport with most of them over the years and easily snuck in laughs, stories, stern words, or his lordly Stark face, depending on what the situation called for, and bailed John out. He didn't know where he would be without his uncle's help. Even leaving Barrowton empty-handed, he had gotten promises of furs, hides, horses, meats and metals, and everything else he had wished from throughout the north. But this final visit was arguably the most important of them all. Simply put, the most valuable resource the north had to offer was lumber, and apart from Winterfell, the Umbers had as much of it as anyone. Bear Island's supply that John had secured wouldn't be enough by itself, and even if it were, their primary buyer would be the Bravo Sea on their eastern coast, who were always looking to build on their impressive fleet. Transporting wood solely from the west to their eastern port wouldn't be cost-effective by land or sea, something John could not afford if he hoped to compete with the stranglehold White Harbor currently held in that arena. Now that he was here sitting in front of Lord Umber, however, whose men called him the Great Jon for he was as tall as Hodder and twice as wide, John was starting to doubt how successful his plan was going to be. And tell me, pup, what need do we have for your southern goods or gold? Pup. Boy. John bit back his distaste at yet another insult. He had heard just about every name thrown his way except what he should have been called. I have come here as the Lord of Moat Cailin, he growled to himself. The least he could do was call John by his given name, if not his title. As I said, Lord Umber, it is not gold you will get or need, but food enough to feed all your people. I can get you the grain from the entirety of the reach through Old Town, through the riverlands from Seaguard, cheaper than we have ever had it before. Enough to feed the entire north. For 10,000 years my people have endured these lands without begging the Southrons to do it. I will not start now. That was the stupidest thing Jon had ever heard. Just because they struggled in the past, didn't mean they had to struggle now when there was a choice. Winter is death, my lord. And it is coming. That is what my lord father always told me. He stood up from his chair. That will not matter to you, nor I, sitting in our warm castles with enough grain stored to live for years. But to a mother with babes to feed, to the farmers whose crops didn't yield, to the elders who leave for the hunt knowing they will never return, to them that could mean survival. We owe that much to them. To our people who we swore to protect and care for. And without worrying after their survival, who knows what great things they might now be capable of. It is a chance for us to build the North in an image our forefathers couldn't even imagine. The impassioned plea seemed to fall on deaf ears, for the Lord of the Last Hearth didn't look impressed. A boy I've taken shits larger than, telling me of a winter he has never seen. And a North he doesn't know. He had seen a winter, Jon thought to protest upset, even if he had been half a boy. And the North was his home, it was all he knew. You know what he meant. Uncle Benjen supported his case, giving Lord Umber a look. Lord Jon's words are true enough. Whatever the Great Jon's response to that would be was interrupted by a guard rushing in, with urgent news if his face was anything to go by. The news as it happened was a wilderling raid on Lord Umber's borders. One big enough that the Great Jon had decided to personally deal with. This is my chance, Jon thought excitedly. My chance to earn his respect. He remembered Uncle Benjen's words when he had finally managed to pull Jon aside. It has been hours of talking and I'm not making any progress with him at all, he had vented. It's not you, Jon, not really. It's just, a hard land makes hard people, and they don't get much harder than the Great Jon. He is the kind of man who is only impressed by strength, that's all. Not flowery words. My words aren't flowery. Jon frowned. He had already known that about the Lord of the Last Hearth, and so he had focused specifically on making his words as direct and straightforward as possible. He wanted to see an outburst from you. Ben Stark revealed. He was trying to make you angry to test if you were the kind of man he considers hard. What kind of man actively tries to get someone angry and uses that to judge their worthiness? Jon thought. If anything, that was easy. Staying calm through the insults, on the other hand, that proved a far better challenge, as Jon could personally attest to. Even right before they had left, Jon had asked for leave to join him, only for the Lord to mockingly say, "A proper southern boy like you ought to stay here and tend to the fires." But Jon had held his tongue, and spoke only of his intentions to fight at the Great Jon's side. If he had known, he could have shouted to his heart's content. I told him what I truly believed. Jon admitted, disappointed. What more can I do than that? He could change what message he came out with, he could maneuver and influence men's wants and doubts, but he couldn't change who he was and how he felt. Perhaps a show of strength, his uncle shrugged. Jon turned to him exasperated. What am I supposed to do, wrestle him? Just give it time. He was no more fond of me when I first met him. He used to only refer to me as the Stark pup the first half a dozen times. What did you do to impress him? Jon questioned eagerly. Well, I guess he was impressed by what I did in the Ironborn Rebellion, and just like that he had felt his expression darken. Great, I just have to wait for a war to impress him, he scowled. But as luck would have it, now he didn't have to. I can show him I am the blood of the North, his equal in every way, by fighting wildlings side by side. You will be in charge of protecting these lands, the Great Jon's booming voice ordered him. I'll give you 10 of my men. He had been put in command. Jon could barely contain his thrill. This was going perfectly. 10 wasn't a lot, but in addition to him and his personal guards Desmond and Hwood, 13 should give them as good a shot as any against any small band of savages. He'd have any who tried it ready in chains. You have my word, Lord Umber, none of these people will come to harm. Jon nearly bounced as he smiled while the rest of their party walked past him. That was until his uncle stopped and gave him an apologetic explanation. The wildlings split back over the pass, son. They won't be coming this way. Lord Umber hadn't believed in him at all. He finally understood sinkingly, he was just leaving John here to do nothing while he went hunting them down. That's how little he thinks of me. He looked down at the realization, burning in shame and anger. Uncle Benjamin gave his head a pat. You are only 11. There are plenty of years yet for you to show your mettle, John. Lady Mormont, Lord Alaric Stark's wife, took an axe to a pack of wolves when she was 12. John reminded him before pleading, you have to convince Lord Umber to take me with you, uncle. I think, in this matter, he might be right, John. Ben Stark looked away grimly. This is no game. Those wildlings have slaughtered 2 villages in the past moon alone. Men, women and children alike. They have been growing bolder by the day, so much so even your father grows restless at the news. If we manage to hunt this bunch down, it isn't words we will be having. Of course he knew they were going to fight them. John scowled. Did his uncle think he expected to have a tea party with lawless savages, raiders and rapists? All the more reason for me to come. You need every sword you can get. Steel, I have little use for wood. His uncle spoke bluntly and he felt his cheeks turning red in embarrassment. How long had he been asking Aunt Daisy to carry a live blade just to get refusal after refusal? That wasn't his fault. I could fight wildlings as well as any man Lord Umber is taking with him and you know it, he boasted. Aunt Daisy was the best fighter he'd ever seen and he could take her to a draw now more often than not. John knew wildlings fought with stone and wood, as they often came to steal real weapons from south of the wall and they dressed in leather and sheepskin, not even plates and mail. So what challenge could they really pose to him? Do I? Ben wondered doubtfully, from all your training in the yard I suppose. These men have all been tested and blooded in real fights with their lives in the balance. I would be too if you just gave me a chance to prove myself. That's all I ask for, a chance. You think just because of your Stark blood, you can go where you want and do what you wish. Well, you can't. If you wish to lead men one day, boy, learn to follow or no one will have any reason to follow you. Stop trying to protect me. I'm ready for this and I need Lord Umber to see this too. I am a High Lord, I deserve as much. Deserve? His uncle's eyes darkened at John's misstep and he shook his head. The great Jon was right. You are a green boy with the smell of summer draped all over you. The wall would freeze over long before every man got what he feels he deserves. In the north, you get what you earn, lad. You will learn of it soon enough. The ones who don't, the ones who are deluded into thinking they can blindly handle things they do not know while drunk on glory, you wait for winter to take you. Please, uncle. I'm sorry, just take me with you. How many times must I tell you, John? No is no. Benjamin said sharply, you are not ready. That you are doing this to curry favor with Lord Umber only makes it that much more obvious. Stay put and obey. Ben Stark left with no smiles for his nephew, only a warning to his guards to make sure he stayed in place like he was some kind of criminal, and John felt the tears prick at the corner of his eyes at the unfairness of it. I'm not going to cry, he told himself angrily. I'll show him what I'm capable of and then he will be apologizing for ever doubting me. Benjamin Stark. He had regretted his outburst the moment he had seen John's face shrink, but he hadn't been able to help himself. It had turned into habit, the sterner side he had to be with them sometimes. He remembered the first time Ashura had put John in his arms as a babe. He had been such a quiet and content toddler and that hadn't changed as he grew. He had soft smiles for everyone he met, perfect etiquette and never so much as raised his voice let alone complained about anyone. Yet his nephew had also grown stubborn as a mule the past years as well, with that look of determination he'd only seen 1,000 times before in his youth on Lyanna, and Ben knew that had only ever meant trouble. John had been thinking of a way to sneak off and join them on his own. It was only a matter of time before he opened himself up, Ben supposed, after getting away from Caitlin. And the Mormonts certainly helped with that. They all adored the Stark twins as the pair had grown to be called, who became quick hits in Bear Island, especially with Daisy who wouldn't hear a word against the boy. Perhaps his sister had rubbed off him slightly too much as well, considering the two spent nearly every moment together and Lya delighted in egging him on now that she was free of Ashura's grasp. Even still, John wasn't tough to handle on his own. His niece on the other hand was a terror no one could stop and she obeyed no one but her father. How does Ned manage to keep her in control? He despaired. At least when Lionel had done whatever she wished when they were children, she told everyone exactly what she would do. Lia had only sweet smiles and nods of agreement before getting into her brand of mischief anyway. The worst part of which was trying to punish her when she looked at him so remorsefully after, however false it was. Daisy had only laughed when he told her that, telling him to let the children be. That was how she and her sisters had been raised in Bear Island after all, freely roaming the island and doing as they liked untroubled. But it wasn't her. Ashura and Ned constantly hounded every time he stopped at Winterfell. So it had come down to him to play the bad lord, a role he rapidly realized he wasn't very good at. He missed getting to be the genial and lovable Uncle Ben who would jape, bring presents and save the day from over-controlling parents. While speaking of stubborn and willful, he thought, since I'm here I may as well try to soften up Umber. Jon had truly done as well as anyone could have asked, but the gods know how stubborn and set in his ways the great Jon was. The least he could do was wrangle a deal out of the man for his nephew. You do my nephew a disservice, Jon. Ben started. He truly spoke from the heart and it has never led him astray. He really imagines a better future for all the North when he says what he does. Pa, wishes and dreams Ben, let them keep those in the South. The great Jon spat out, you know what it takes to survive up here. The North is hard and cold, and has no mercy, and that boy knows nothing of it. Lad seems a good sort, he acknowledged finally. But I saw the boy's mother stand up against Baratheon in the Red Keep. Even a woman, and she has 10 times his courage. He's more mouse than wolf. That wasn't fair, Ben thought, offended. If you knew half what that boy's seen you would know he has more courage than any grown man could dream of. He saw the behemoth of a man frowning while eyeing the mud. And Benjen quickly picked up on the reason for his concern. If the wildlings had come through here, which they must have in order to leave, there should have been tracks. But there weren't. Which meant? It meant that the wildlings had never actually left. They had likely just heard their arrival and hid back to strike at the farm once more. Ben felt the blood leaving his face rapidly. Gods, Jon. He swung his horse around rapidly and burst back towards the woods. Jon Snow. They just keep treating me like a boy. He stomped his foot angrily. Desmond's eyes flicked up lazily and he sighed, mayhaps, it is because you are half a boy still, little lord. Stop calling me that, he demanded, call me Lord Jon from now on. It is time they all see me for what I really am, and that will not happen while my own guard does not. I take orders from your lord father, not you, he said lightly. And a boy who needs to ask to be called something he's not is still a little lord to me. You were supposed to be on my side, he fumed momentarily before collapsing into a haystack next to him. What was the use? He was stuck here doing nothing for hours anyway. I may as well practice my skills, he thought brightly, wondering what the chances were that he'd persuade Desmond to call him by his proper title by the time his uncle returned. Hey Des, what's going to happen to you after I move to Moat Cailin? His guard shrugged easily, whatever your lord father asks of me, little lord. That was a non-answer. Jon decided to try again. But if you could choose on what to do and where to go, would you, what would you decide? Would you come with me? Desmond smirked in understanding. You wouldn't be the worst lordling to follow, but I would have need of some convincing. A raise would do nicely. You could be captain of my guard. Jon dangled the offer, like Jory is for father, but a captain of the guard shows a little more respect to his lord, I think, he added as an afterthought. Desmond blinked at him for a moment before bursting into laughter. Oh, you are good, little lord. Really good, but his amusement faded as he caught sight of something in the distance. Jon, we must get you out of here now. Desmond said, suddenly serious. What are you talking about? Jon frowned. But soon enough he saw exactly what his guard meant. Wildlings, at least a dozen, heading toward the farmer's keep. Heading towards them. Uncle Benjen had been wrong, they had never left at all. He had assigned 3 of the Great Jon's men to watch the river, which meant they were likely dead. There were supposed to be 3 more at the farm entrance, but they must have already fled. Which left 7 including him. Jon felt a shiver go through him. This had been his responsibility and he had failed miserably. His uncle had the right of it all along, Jon thought. He wasn't ready for this at all. The idea alone of facing them suddenly terrified him. Let's go. Desmond barked harshly, but he found he couldn't move off his spot. "I can't," he said quietly, shaking his head. "I can't go." No matter how much he wanted to. "What do you mean you can't? These are my father's lands and these people are his people. They will not be abandoned nor an inch of this grass ceded," he insisted, "not while a son of Ned Stark still breathes." "Don't be a fool," his guard snapped. "Lord Eddard put me in charge of your safety and I will not let you race out to fight wildlings when they outnumber us 2-1. Not to impress Lord Umber for your glory." Apart from Des and Hood, the 4 men left seemed more eager to run than fight. "If you want to lead," his uncle had said, "learn to follow." And Jon finally understood. Every decision he made could cost these men everything. Why would they fight for someone who didn't even understand what cost he was asking them to pay? Someone who didn't involve them in his decisions, in his reasonings, and someone who was asking more of them than they could give. Someone who didn't understand them and what it was to be them. "You are right. This isn't about Lord Umber or me. We don't matter," he said softly, "but the North matters. The North is worth it, no matter the odds. And they are the North." He pointed shakily to the farmer's house that would be soon overrun. The first, but Jon doubted the wildlings would stop at that by themselves. "Lord Eddard told me once that being a lord was like having thousands of children and worrying about all of them. I can't," he broke off. "I am a son of Winterfell, the blood of the North as they are, and I can't just leave them to their fate." "We swore oaths," Desmond said firmly. "To obey your Lord Father. Our duty is to protect the son of the Warden of the North." "Not them," Jon heard the words not said clearly enough. "I'm sorry, Jon. Your duty might only be to protect me," Jon acceded, "but it is my duty to do what is right." "I know. And I am sorry too, because now I am asking you to break them," he said seriously. "I'm going down there no matter what. I must. And I could use some help." The men were exchanging glances. "I ask much of you, I know. If you do this you won't come away with any honors or wealth, and maybe not even your lives. Even if we succeed you will have to face my father's ire and I don't have anything to offer you but my gratitude." Jon finally admitted quietly. "None of you serve me. None of you have any reason to fight with me, but if you do, I will never forget it. And you will know that I will always fight for you too." He felt his voice crack during his desperate plea. "That much I will do for as long as I live. I promise." He watched his guard look up to Old Man Hood for direction, the older man staring at him intently for a moment that seemed to stretch an eternity before thickly nodding his head in approval. "What would you have of us, my lord?" Jon looked back down at the field, both relieved and nervous. They couldn't just charge down and attack, it would be a slaughter. "I've read a book on this, I'm sure." He racked his brain trying to remember all his lessons on war strategy. But instead he only remembered how Robb would always beat him in Savas back in Winterfell, and any game of strategy really. Robb was the best strategist he knew. Numbers don't matter, his brother had boasted once after coming back to beat him after being down 8 pieces, not if you have the right trap. What would Robb do? "I hit you from the sides," he could hear his brother's taunt, "and you never even saw it coming." Jon's eyes caught sight of the thick brushes poking out of each side past the farmer's hut, and an idea starting to take him. If the men could get in on either side and take them by surprise. "I think I have a plan on how to deal with their numbers," he revealed before explaining the details. "I don't know about this, Jon," Desmond said tightly, clearly disapproving of the idea that he go in alone to give them the chance to fill in the brushes without detection. "I can keep them distracted," he promised. "You know I am good with my words. These savages aren't the kind of men who listen to words. They are as likely to slit your throat before you have the chance to blink. Just trust me," he pressed. "And go get in position. We don't have time to spare," he told his friend before realizing there was another problem. "Wait. Des. What now, little lord?" he asked with clear exasperation. Do you have an extra sword by any chance?" he wondered sheepishly, embarrassed that he wasn't allowed to carry live steel yet and his guard could only snort. When Jon approached, he noticed with alarm that the farmer was already dead, having taken a spear to the eye. He saw the farmer's wife cradling an infant child and a young girl huddled by her side with 2 boys guarding the door. They were only 7 or 8, just younger than Sansa, but they stood bravely in their spot despite carrying only a pitchfork and a rake. "Hey, leave them be," he shouted, showing his steel until all the men turned to face him. "Leave them be and I will not have to harm you." His distraction worked, if only because his sudden presence seemed to amuse the wildlings just as much as it seemed to shock the farmer's family. "What's this? One little boy? You are all the reinforcement the great lords can spare," one laughed mockingly. "Southerners have no shame, sending babes still sucking their mothers' teats to do their fighting for them. I am the son of Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell by Lady Ashera Dayne," Jon warned him. "And these people are all under my father's protection. Now run back to where you came or I'll see you all dead." The threat sounded empty even to Jon's own ears, but he stood his ground and glowered at them as menacingly as he could make himself seem anyway. "The boy's a wolf pup, true enough," the leader growled. "Only a Stark would be arrogant and stupid enough to threaten when a smarter man would beg." "Stupid and arrogant, am I?" he thought. "You best look in a mirror. You are walking right into my trap." But as the men started to surround him, his fledgling confidence came crashing down. Where was Desmond? They should have been here by now, he thought, his heart beating rapidly. The man stepped forward, fleshy and blond with watery eyes. Unlike the rest who were only armed with spears and lances hardened by fire, his weapon was a great curved scythe and Jon could practically feel its edge of sharpened steel as if it were against his neck. "I will carve out your eyes, boy, and put them on the door so you can watch while I hump her bloody," he pointed to the farmer's wife. The words held such malice, Jon had to physically force himself not to step back. "I am going to die." His insides swelled with panic before his eyes landed once more on the woman cradling her newborn babe tightly to her chest, the fear evident in her expression. Jon closed his eyes, trying desperately to stop his arms from shaking. "Protect the innocent. Defend the weak," he repeated like a mantra. "Have you ever used that for anything besides cleaning your teeth, boy?" "No, but I will," he said, taking a deep breath and lifting his sword, suddenly more sure than he'd ever been of anything in his life. "I will use it right now to stop you." Right on cue, his men came bursting from either side of the trees, taking the wildlings by surprise and halving their number with quick sword strokes. Now there was a chance, an even fight. There were 9 wildlings and 7 of them, he counted, watching Des and would take 2 each. As for him, well, he did the stupidest thing he could think of. He attacked the large blonde man leading them. "I always wished to kill a Stark, you will do nicely." Jon spun out of the way just as his scythe screeched against the spot he'd been standing in moments earlier. "I'm faster than him," he decided quickly. "Far faster. I just need an opening." "You'd get one even easier if you made him drop his furs," he could almost hear his twin suggest playfully with a grin. "Stop running," the man roared, and Jon feigned high and sliced low at the band of his waist, dropping his pants to his ankles. "All right, I stopped. What should I do now?" Jon asked cheekily. "I will feed you your own eyes when I'm done with you, pup, before sending your bloody, dripping head all the way south as a gift to your lordly father," he promised furiously with a dark grin, and in that moment, Jon felt like he was in the story of Sir Arthur Dayne's duel against the Smiling Knight. Scythe and sword met once more, and Jon would only realize much later that he had somehow met the strike with his power alone. "I'm sure you will try," Jon taunted. "I've been told I have pretty eyes, and I would want new ones too if mine were as useless and watery as yours." He felt brief satisfaction at the angry flash in the man's eyes until he moved forward faster than Jon could see coming, sending Jon forcefully to the ground. Jon pushed his sword up right in time, as the wildling's scythe came down an inch away from his eye. "Too close," he gulped, heart beating rapidly. He barely parried away a second hit and a third before feeling the man's other fist smash into his face. The hit left him dizzy and uncoordinated, and when the wildling smashed his head down on the ground forcefully, Jon realized he was too disoriented to make out a thing. "No, I have to see," he willed desperately. "I have to. If the man killed him, he would kill that entire family right after, and Jon couldn't let that happen." And suddenly he was. But not from his own eyes, much to his shock. He was seeing the whole ordeal from the sky soaring overhead. The wildling was preparing to bring down the scythe to carve out his eyes, though Jon still couldn't be sure how he was sensing so. At that moment Jon forgot all his training, all his teachings and lessons, and simply did what every instinct screamed at him to do. He swung up in a blind furious burst. His strike somehow came stronger than it ever had before, powerful enough to deflect his enemy's edge and still cleave straight through his arm. He watched in shock as the man spun and turned on the ground, clutching the bloody stump that was once his arm. John scooted away desperately, still woozy, clutching his eyes shut. "I want to see like I was before," he prayed hysterically, "with my own eyes," and only then did he notice a pair of warm hands had enveloped him and the fighting all around them had finished. Uncle Ben, he thought in a daze, hugging against him fiercely. When had he arrived? "I got you, John. I got you," his uncle soothed as John wriggled against him. "Calm down. You are all right now. It's going to be okay," he told himself. "Uncle Benjamin is here." And he took in a deep breath, nearly sagging in relief when he finally looked up and his sight was back to normal, apart from the pounding pain in his head. How had that happened? He wondered. Better yet, what had even happened? He looked up in vague doubt, catching sight of the bird flying overhead. Whatever that had been, John was sure he'd be dead if not for it. That was the weeping man. Ben Stark told him grimly as John tried to regain his bearings. The Weeper. From those frightening stories old Nan would tell at Bran's request. The one who raped and pillaged and murdered, leaving only bloody eyes of his enemies in his wake. It couldn't be. "You did good, lad," Ben Stark said, half in disbelief, pulling him close. "We saw the whole thing, and it was quite the sight. But gods, boy, never do that to me again. Your mother would skin me alive, and don't even make me mention your father." His uncle laughed, relieved, messing up his hair and laying a kiss on his head. "Is he still alive?" "Aye. The Great Jon is bringing him back to the last hearth for questioning, then they'll take his head. He'd meet justice then, at the least." John nodded, still feeling slightly shaken up by the whole incident, like he had gotten his head rung in a spa but 10 times worse. Between his bruises and his thumping head he knew he wouldn't even be able to walk straight now, much less help out, so he proceeded to sit on the log, faithfully watching his uncle ordering men around to help take care of things when he saw the farmer's family approaching him. A bout of guilt overtook him. The farmer might have lived had he done his job properly and protected the farm better. Would she blame him for it? He wondered with dread. "Thank you, my lord," the woman said instead, her expression full of gratitude, and John felt that much worse. Why was she thanking him? He had let her husband die. "Your name is John, my lord," she checked hesitantly, and he could still only nod. Much to his surprise, the woman proceeded to place the babe in his arms. A girl, he finally saw. "We hadn't come up with a name, but I know what she'll be called now," she said softly. "Joanna." John gulped hard, drowning in emotion while cradling the child, trying to keep his eyes from tearing up and his hands from shaking. "You shouldn't," he wanted to insist. "You shouldn't name your child for me. I didn't do anything special. This girl will never know her father because of me." But then the others all bowed low as well. The 2 brothers and sister looked at him with thankful smiles, glancing down at their sister. "I did that much at least," John thought, suddenly feeling a warm feeling flow through him. "I helped them." "You honor me," he said croakily, "more than I deserve, but I will try to be a worthy namesake." The moment with the family was all he could think about. That and the feeling he'd had seeing the Weeper dragged away in chains. It had felt good to protect them, it had felt right to get them the justice they deserved. He almost felt like a real knight in that moment, as if he did something his uncle, Sir Arthur Dane, must have done hundreds of times. If it was, John could understand exactly why every boy would want to be one. Even when they had gone back to the last hearth and the Great Jon had approached him with regards to his deed, he still couldn't get the feeling away. "He underestimated me," John acknowledged, before growing bolder. "As have you, Lord Umber." John thanked the gods. The giant had bellowed a laugh at that, as he had been about ready to piss in his pants in fear. But that, along with his valor in the fight, had been enough for the Lord of the Last Hearth to proudly proclaim how the boy Lord of Moat Cailin was a wolf after all, a Stark to the bone as his forefathers had been for over 8,000 years. And he had been only too happy to sign a deal with John for Umberwood. "Pretty eyes, home," was all Desmond had to say, full of amusement on the way back. "You would be lucky if I didn't let your sister learn of that bit." John looked startled, finally finding himself smiling, "You wouldn't." When their party had gotten back to Bear Island, filled with jubilation, they had found a guest awaiting them. "Father." John's eyes widened at the sight of the Lord of Winterfell. It was only the third time he'd come to visit them in the past 2 years, but every one of his stays was a welcome surprise, even if the longest had only lasted 3 days. "John," he greeted with a smile, John's twin already curled up happily against his arm. "Daisy told me you had gone with your uncle to meet Lord Umber. You got what you were looking for, I hope." "I did, Father," John answered slowly, praying he wouldn't be asked anymore. Uncle Benjen would get in trouble if Father had learned what transpired, and Desmond and Hood as well. "Let us see the terms you managed to wrangle out of him then, shall we?" John reluctantly took him through the deal's details, and he could make out Father's mild suspicion at the generous dealing. The great Jon had been drunk out of his mind from the feast in his honor while signing, John remembered. But considering the giant took to a glass as easily as other men did to breathing air, he hadn't thought that affected the decision all that much. "Good terms," Father mused. "He liked you. Simple as the great Jon comes across as, he has a cunning about him too." "Not at first," John admitted. He spent half the visit mocking me and calling me a southern boy. But he warmed up to me at the end." The Lord of Winterfell nodded without taking his eyes off him. "And what did you do, to earn this respect?" No matter how much he wanted to, John wouldn't lie. So he told the Lord of Winterfell exactly what had happened, watching as he listened on blank-faced. Ned Stark's voice had gone cold as ice at the end of his tale when John pleaded with him to forgive the men. "They were not sent to serve you, son. They were sent to keep you safe. It pleases me to see you hail, and I am proud of what you did, but a man like the Weeper could have split you in half had he truly cared to. I gave them orders. They disobeyed their oaths to you, and I know the price for it must be paid. It's only right." John acknowledged, "I only ask that you punish me in their stead, my lord. I forced them to ignore your command knowing full well what I was doing, so the folly was truly mine alone. I'm willing to accept the consequences for it." Lai, who had been watching their back and forth silently, finally decided to make her voice known. "You know John wouldn't have disobeyed you if he hadn't felt it was a good reason, Father," she appealed sweetly. "Mayhaps, you can forgive Hood and Desmond as John asks if he were to reflect on his disobedience." Father went quiet for a long while before finally raising a single eyebrow. "Very well. I will have words with Hood and Desmond, nothing more. As for punishment, I will leave it up to your capable hands to find a fitting one for your brother's actions, Lai." His twin gave him a mischievous look, and John dreaded it so much he almost wished to ask Father if he would just punish instead. Almost. But the happiness that he hadn't gotten Desmond and Hood in trouble was too overwhelming. "How is everyone back in Winterfell?" John asked him. "Robb, Sansa, Arya and Bran. They are all hale and healthy as ever," Father assured. "Your siblings passed on their regards, and they wished for you to know they miss you as much as ever. Robb told me to inform you he cannot wait for the chance to spar with you again. He is sure that you will no longer be a match for him." His brother might be right, John smirked, but certainly not in the way he thought. "As for Arya, your sister nearly begged my ear off for permission to accompany me here since the moment she heard I was traveling north. I finally managed to calm her down by promising I would bring her the next time." That sounded like exactly something Arya would do, he smiled at the thought. "And my mother?" he asked hesitantly. "How is she faring?" Lord Eddard looked away with a grimace. "As well as she can be." It was the same response as every time he'd ask, but he felt a small amount of relief that his tidings hadn't been worse. Father didn't lie, but John knew he didn't want to upset them with the truth either. She had taken to their absence terribly. He'd overheard Father tell Uncle Benjen during his last visit how worried he was that she locked herself up in her tower all alone every waking moment apart from the cherished time she spent with Arya. That the servants whispered she was like a ghost nowadays, with her waxy skin and hollow eyes. How dearly John missed her. He could remember so vividly the excitement in her eyes whenever she would beat him in a game of Sivas, her kind smiles when she'd take them to visit the small folk in Wintertown, and especially the warm feel of her hugs when she'd wrap him so tightly against her. Moat Cailin was only months away from completion, and while Uncle Benjen had informed him the plan was for him to move in first and govern the lands till John came of age, he knew he could convince his uncle he was ready. Soon, he told himself. We will all be together again real soon, Mother. I promise. Ned Stark. As he talked with Wood, Ned realized that John apparently hadn't been as heavy on the details as he should have. These are my father's lands and these people are his people. They will not be abandoned nor an inch of this grass ceded, not while a son of Ned Stark still breathes. The lad told us. He stood there by himself facing off against 15 wildlings to let us get into position, the guard revealed with a smile, and Ned could only look away, despite the pride that filled him. It wasn't what he expected of his son, truth be told. John had always been a sweet boy, Ned could still remember, just wanting to make others happy. But he had been shy, a little too shy perhaps, and never failing to be polite and charming. He had looked for a long while for traces of the wild and fierce woman Lyanna had become, the girl with a will of iron, only to be left wondering if the boy was more like Roriger. But the longer he had watched, the more he had started to recall the sweet little girl who used to toddle behind him and Brandon begging so nicely to be included in their games instead. It seemed like a lifetime ago. Forgive me, my lord. Wood looked down, though he didn't look particularly apologetic. I served your father before you, and when I was a boy, I watched his father rule the north before him. I've seen more men pass through these lands than I can remember. Great men, awful men and every sort in between. If you will forgive my saying so, your boy, the man shook his head, he's special, Lord Eddard. I couldn't help but wish to see what he would do. I know he's special, he said heavily. I raised him. But better it be hidden than the boy ending up dead. He looked up to the sky with a sigh. Gods, Lyanna, what am I to do? 294 AC at Winterfell. Ashura Dane. She sat by the rookery, patiently awaiting for any incoming birds. It was these moments she looked forward to the most, where for a short while she could let her excitement grow, pretending it was her children she'd be seeing instead of pieces of parchment with their words. When the last raven had come from Bear Island with only one note attached instead of two, she had nearly been beside herself with worry before the contents of her daughter's hand informed her John was away with Benjen at the last hearth and his raven would likely come from there. Yet the hour continued to grow late and the harsh northern sky looked as empty as ever. Another day done, another day to wait. They will come today, Aunt Ashura. Arya insisted from her spot, lounging lazily at Ashura's side, clearly picking up on her agitation. She had found the youngest Stark girl was often right on this matter. The girl was as good with sums as anyone she'd ever seen, and she'd dedicated enough time to actually calculate the time it would take for her siblings' letters to reach Winterfell based on their sending schedule. You are right, sweeterling. It's just a little late, I'm sure, she conceded before trying to get her mind off the anticipation by asking curiously, did your sister have anything of note to tell you? Lyra's letters, at least the ones to her, tended to be as bare-boned as anyone could possibly write. Then again, Ashura supposed she should have been grateful to be getting anything at all. Her restless daughter actually taking the time to sit in one place and write out 6 letters every month was sign enough of how much she missed them. Just the same as usual. Lya told me about how they get to go explore the island, and how John finally beat Aunt Daisy in a spa. She saw dull resentment fill the girl's eyes. I wish I was with them. Lya doesn't even want to train like I do, and she gets to see the Mormont girls do it every day. You aren't the only one, she thought. And she tells me of her lessons. I wish I had a governess like Lya does. Arya admitted, downcast. She sounds a lot better than Septa Mordane. What did your Septa do this time, little one? Arya had complaints galore about Septa Mordane. And in Ashura's opinion, they seemed mostly justified. Singling out one girl in a room full of her peers, offering criticism without actually giving any instructions on correcting said mistakes, she was likely half the reason behind the stirring resentment between the sisters. Ashura remembered the Septa on Starfall being much the same until her own mother had got a hold of her and spun her straight. Septas can be like that sometimes, she had comforted the young Stark girl. But she knew there were good ones too. The Septa that Rhalyna had brought with her to Starfall for Illyria for one was proof of that, if her sister's letters were anything to go by. Arya's face scrunched in a scowl. I heard her talking with my mother. Sansa's work is as pretty as she is. She has such fine, delicate hands, she says. But when mother asked about me, she told her Arya has the hands of a blacksmith. The girl looked down at her hands dolefully as if to make sure that wasn't truly the case. Ashura laughed at that and pulled Arya's hands up to her lips for a tender kiss. Some hands are meant for needles, some are not. Your sister is wonderful at what she does, but that takes nothing away from you. And it certainly does not make yours any less beautiful, Arya. The gods fashioned them for us all for a purpose, and you will find yours in your own time. I wasn't much good with needlework either. Ashura revealed with a small grin, and I turned out decent enough, I like to think. Her words made Arya smile up at her. You could teach me instead, couldn't you, Aunt Ashura? Like you used to do for Laya, she asked pleadingly with those grey eyes that looked so much like her daughter's. Ashura went quiet. As dearly as she loved Arya, she wasn't the girl's mother. If Ned Stark wished to adhere to his wife's wishes and make a southern courtly lady of his daughter under a Septa's tutelage, it wasn't her place to interfere. And there was a second snag with that. Ashura hadn't spoken a word to Ned in 2 years, she hadn't wished to so much as look into his face. He had made an attempt 2 or 3 times, but she had dismissed him quickly every time. It was petty perhaps, and definitely illogical, but she couldn't help but blame him for having lost Jon and Lyra. She felt her fist curl up in bitterness. She wouldn't have had to send them to Bear Island if he wasn't such a frozen-faced, cold-hearted fiend. But a frozen-faced, cold-hearted fiend you are still in love with, the voice in her head mocked cruelly. Still, she waved the uncomfortable thought aside, eyes falling back to her company. Her heart went out to the girl. No child should be made to feel like she was in their own home. Arya was as kind as she was wild, she thought fondly, and Ashura had no idea what she would have done the past 2 years without her presence. Those first few months without Lyra and Jon, it had been tougher than anything she'd ever been through, and at times she'd been sure she had turned half-crazed without them, just staring bleakly at those blank walls. But Arya Stark had stuck stubbornly by her side the entire time on her brother's word alone, no easy feat considering the amount of pressure Ashura knew her mother had put on her to do the opposite. Was whatever pride Ashura had left really more important than a little relief she might be able to give the young girl? I suppose I can ask your father, she offered with only a slight hesitation, though I would not get your hopes up on him agreeing. Despite the warning, Arya smiled brilliantly, pulling her into a hug. Thank you. Thank you. There is something else I wish for you to understand in the meanwhile. A piece of advice I used to give Jon and Lyra all the time. No one else can determine your worth, Arya. Not your father, not me, not your mother, not any Septa. Nor any of your brothers or sisters either. Only you. And when you understand that, when you understand who you are, it will not matter what anyone says or wishes of you, you will be happy. She saw Arya digest her words slowly, but before she could respond, a sight from past the horizon caught her attention. Jon's letters, she realized, following the girl's line of vision, and excitement and nervousness both bubbled within her. Unlike Lyra's outlines that simply regurgitated her routine, she could never say for certain what tidings Jon would bring. Sometimes before he was set to make a visit to a certain castle, he'd run her through what he planned to say to a certain lord or lady and ask for her advice and for approval of his ideas. She sent little pointers whenever she could manage on whichever of Ned's bannermen she remembered something of worth, but it had been clear enough to her that between his uncle and his own preparation he had already had a good handle on it. She had already taught him all the tricks she knew, after all. Other times, he'd talk of what he got up to with Laya and the Mormont girls, new things he discovered while exploring the island, and updates on his training with Daisy and Alysanne and new moves he had learned. Once recently he'd even asked for her help when feeling guilty after hearing a fight between Lord Jorah and Lady Lyness. Apparently the Lord of Bear Island had asked her to pawn off jewels to cover them in a tight spot, and the lady had gone into near hysterics. She'd advised him to talk with Ned about sending something monthly to Bear Island that could be seen as something for his and Lyra's use but eased the burden on the Mormonts. It was strange though, she frowned briefly, that Ben had never brought up any issues like that when he visited. It was common knowledge they were a relatively poor house, but surely he and Daisy would have known if Bear Island's finances were growing that thin. She resolved to ask him the next time he came down, just as the bird landed on her lap. Ashura opened the letter from Jon with her usual eagerness, devouring its contents in a hurry. Dearest mother. I'm sorry if my lack of a letter from Bear Island worried you. I assure you I'm hale and safe as ever, and even better. I got the deal out of Lord Umber. I had been sure he was going to refuse me, but as fate would have it, we ended up into a little spat with wildlings, and the great Yon appreciated my offer of help enough to change his mind. I've attached the terms of the deal if you wish to take a look and let me know how well it stacks up. As it is, that is the final deal we needed of the Northern Lords, and it is back to Bear Island for us on the morrow. Lia and I have been exploring the island with the Mormont girls whenever we get the chance, and sometimes it is hard to believe after the past 2 years there is still so much more left to see. We did finally see a bear or two, but I think that Lia is still desperate to see one up close. Fear not, I'll keep her out of trouble. The next time you and Arya go to Wintertown, tell Desmond's parents he says hello. He didn't actually say as much, I admit, but he should, so I'm doing it for him. I hope everything back in Winterfell is still well with you. I miss you, Mother, more than I could ever put into words. But we will be together soon, I know it. Love, your little star. Jon. As she finished reading through, she found her lips pressed together thinly. A little spat. Her son thought himself too clever. It had been her who had first taught him his letters, and her who had shown him how to manipulate his messages by stressing and relaxing various words. And now he was trying to do so on her. For some reason she couldn't figure, he had suddenly started taking to trying to shield her from more sensitive truths, perhaps so as to not upset or scare her, but things like this only made her worry all that more. I need to know what really happened. She looked over at the stack of his other letters. Could he have told Robb? He was Jon's sparring partner, and she knew when they were younger they talked about fighting wildlings all the time. It sounded like the sort of thing he'd share the details on. But she didn't care to know how he looked fighting or whatever fancy maneuvers he used. She had to know how he was feeling. Was her little boy hurt, or afraid or distressed? Was he all right? Her eyes landed on the girl next to her who was running through her own letter wide-eyed, and she knew where she would get her answer. There it is. She should have thought of that first, given how her son and Arya had always been each other's secret keepers. They trusted each other with everything. If there was any information at all, it would be in there. Unfortunately for Ashura, when she said secret keeper she meant secret keeper. For all Arya would normally indulge her, unlike her siblings she vigorously refused to ever let Ashura read any of Jon's letters to her. But this time Ashura had no choice but to convince the girl. Did your brother write to you about a wildling attack while he was at the last hearth? She questioned innocuously. The girl acknowledged slowly, he did. I'm afraid he's being rather tight-lipped about the incident to me. Jon's fine, Aunt Ashura. Arya assured, though she didn't seem too certain of it herself. He would be back in Bear Island by now. Would you mind if I took a look at what he said to you? Ashura asked, and the girl frowned. I'm sorry, but I can't let you see it, she insisted stubbornly. I can't betray Jon. Jon would have told me if there was something wrong, and I would tell you. You know how Jon can be. Ashura continued, how he tries to keep his worries and problems to himself to stop others from worrying over him. I just want to make sure he's not in trouble, that he's truly fine as he claims. As his mother I know how to read behind his lines. Arya pursed her lips in thought for a long minute. Just the part about the wildlings, right? So you can make sure Jon's all right, she double-checked hesitantly. You have my word. Ashura promised her. Hello Arya. My mother finally told you of Sir Arthur Dayne and the Brotherhood, did she? I always loved that tale too. I thought of it recently too when I visited the last hearth. You remember the Weeper, from old Nan's stories? The one who leaves people's bloody, eyeless heads on pikes. I fought him there. I was so scared, little sister, I was sure he was going to kill me. But I had no choice. They were trying to kill a family of farmers and I had to do something. So I thought of what Uncle Arthur would have done in my place. I've never taken a beating like that in my life, my head was spinning and I was crying in Uncle Benjen's arms like a babe by the end. But I managed to cut off his arm. I'm a little embarrassed to mention the next bit, truth be told, but the farmer's wife ended up naming her newborn daughter after me. I couldn't believe it. It was a moment I don't think I can forget. I wish I could have done more, I wish I could have saved her father, but I failed them. Gods, what was Benjen doing? She thought, horrified. He had swore to her he'd watch over Jon and Lyra's safety, but here he was letting her son gallivant through the north fighting grown savages by himself. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Whatever happened, he was safe now. She forced herself to remain calm. He had come out unscathed. But she had to see him. An overwhelming desire took her to see it was so with her own eyes. As Jon had said, he had already finished visiting every High Lord in the north at least once, and Moat Cailin was nearing completion. He had made his alliances, and if he hadn't managed to convince them by now, he never would, she told herself. That, along with the fact that Jon's 11th name day had already passed and there was no reason for him and Lyra to stay away any longer. "What do you think?" Arya asked in concern about her brother's wellness when she handed the girl back the letter. "I think that Jon and Lyra have been away too long," she finally said. Arya's eyes widened in excitement as she took in her words. "You mean it's time they came back to Winterfell?" Ashura confirmed. "It's time Jon learned the truth." Jon Snow. Father had stayed back for 7 days before departing for Winterfell. During the feast on the final night, much to his jubilant shock, Aunt Daisy had presented him with a longsword. Castle forged and newly made, Jon could still remember how the moonlight had shone down on the steel of the splendid weapon the first he had seen it. "You are ready," she told him proudly. "I was younger yet when I was given my first Morning Star. And we can't have you carrying wood any longer after having proven your valor to all the north, Jon Weepersbane," she finished teasingly. Weepersbane. That had started at the last hearth, when they had returned to a grand feast in his honor, though Jon couldn't exactly remember how. He recalled the Weeper, missing an arm and tied in the middle of the hall among other captives, being mocked and taunted by the Umber men. Jon had thought the whole thing rather distasteful but said nothing, unwilling to dent the goodwill he had only just built up with the Umbers over a honorless murderer. Every man apart from him had been half in their cups, as Uncle Ben had only let him have one glass, and perhaps it had been Horisban, the great Jon's uncle, who had once disemboweled a whore to earn his moniker, who had taunted the Wilderling for losing to a boy with a similar title. Or Mors Crowfoot, his brother, who had a deep hatred for wildlings ever since one had abducted his daughter. Whoever it had been, the men in their drunken splendor had loved it, and soon the chants had filled the hall, much to Jon's embarrassment. And as Aunt Daisy had learned of it now, Jon could only hope Uncle Benjen had been the one to tell her, though it was much more likely the tale had spread from the soldiers to Bear Island as well. He wasn't sure what to make of the name. His thoughts were interrupted as Jon felt a weight starting to crawl higher and higher atop him until a head popped out from under his covers. "Are you ready?" his sister asked excitedly, grey eyes peering down at him. "Not today, Lyra," he begged off tiredly. "We don't kneel vigil here like Southerners do. Here, if you are ready to carry steel, your sword must be blooded," his aunt had told him. And unlike she usually would, she had not held back one bit in the ceremonial duel. By the time he had managed to first draw blood from her, his body had been littered with bruises and cuts, an ache he was still feeling. But the response only made his sister frown. "Come on, Jon," she appealed, "we don't even have to use the secret passages to trick the guards today like usual, they are all passed out drunk because of your celebration." After many moons, Lyra had finally figured out how to escape their guards enough to use the secret passages she had learned. As it happened, there was a single passage leading out of Mormont Keep straight from his room. So his twin would slip into his chambers and they would leave into the night, while the men stood watch outside without bothering to check in what they thought was a closed room filled with sleeping children. The sneaking out had sent him into fits of guilt initially, knowing father had set it up for their protection and it would be their uncle and their guards who would have to answer to him if anything happened to them. "We are much faster without them and they just turn everything into a bore," his sister had mollified him. "Besides, I've seen you fight. I know you won't ever let anything happen to me." And Jon had to admit, Lyra was right. It was different getting to explore the island, just the two of them. They were free to be as silly as possible, and cater to whatever whim and desire they wished. It was exhilarating. They raced to see who could climb to the top the old gnarled oaks and tall pines first. Lyra had loved that, as it reminded her of how she'd climb the walls of Winterfell with Bran. They would place apples, beets and berries on the thorn bushes and hide at a distance, laughing the night away when they saw deer trying and failing again and again to reach it no matter how they attempted it. Other times they would strip for a swim along the coasts trying to see all the different kinds of fish that came out at night and how they differed from the usual animals they would see in the day. And John's personal favorite was when they'd go by the creek and hop across the grey stones bearded with moss to see who could make it across the fastest without touching the water. It had helped him with learning to keep his speed and balance, and he never lost at it. But the only place he wanted to be right now was exactly where he was, on his bed. John kept his eyes closed and tried ignoring her, hoping she'd get the hint, but he should have known better. Leia moved to sit on his chest instead, trapping him in place before bending down to lay a sloppy, mushy kiss on his cheek. "You, gross. Leia." He wrinkled his nose and rolled them over before wiping his cheek down with revulsion. She knew he hated that, he scowled, with all that spit and wetness. But his twin only grinned heartily from under him. "Well, you are awake now," she suggested innocently. "And you can count this as your punishment that father ordered me to give you." "Fine," he huffed, exasperated. He picked himself off her and began stacking their pillows on top of each other on the bed in a vague imitation of their sleeping selves in case someone were to take a peek inside. "Let's go." "Where are we going this time?" She smirked. "The Bear Caves." That made him freeze in his tracks. The caves were on the other side of the island, the furthest coast. They had never gone that far before and John was sure they wouldn't be able to make the journey back in time. "We can't go there now, Leia. We have to be back before dawn or we will get caught." "We have to go now," she insisted. "We have already checked so many times during the day and the only time we see bears, it is from like thousands of miles away." "Aunt Daisy told us never to go to the caves after dark," he reminded her. "No, she didn't." Leia disagreed. "She said if we go there after dark, bears would eat us. Not that we couldn't go there." Those sounded like much the same thing to him. "That must mean a lot more bears come out at night, which is what we want," his sister continued happily. He certainly wanted nothing of the sort. "I'm going now, John. Come if you will." She shrugged while bouncing away. "Hey, wait up," he called as he ran after her. A couple hours later, he was seriously regretting that decision. "Well," he hissed, "are you happy now? We have finally seen a bear as up close can get. Can we go back now?" She blinked, her eyes gleaming excitedly. "Did you see how she charged us?" "Did he see?" He stared at her in disbelief. Did she not realize he was the one who had pulled her away safely? "Of course I saw how the bear charged us. I nearly became its snack," he informed her testily. "You know what that means, don't you? Bears aren't usually territorial, so she must have cubs around. I bet they are the cutest. We have to find them. They are probably in one of the highest caves." "No, Leia," he put his foot down, "we are going to go back now. No more cubs, or bears or anything. If we don't leave right now, we will not make it back in time and we will get discovered." He saw her pout at the reminder. She was quiet for a long minute. "Fine. How about a compromise? See that path?" She pointed to the trail on the side. "This way is just 10 minutes around and then it goes back down. If we see the cubs on the way, great, or else we go back anyway." Leia promised. That didn't sound so bad, John considered, and they could still make it back in time. But once they had climbed up longer than he cared to count, he realized it wasn't 10 minutes around anywhere. His twin was just taking him up the highest caves just as she wanted them to go. "You lied, Leia. We just keep going up." "Well yeah," she conceded, "but now that you're here, it doesn't matter, does it?" He saw her finish while shrugging brightly. "You always do this. Just like when you always trick me into getting my hair cut." He had hated getting his hair cut, so when it grew too long, she would always tell him they were going to play at the creek and then lead him right to the trap only to walk away with a nice reward courtesy of mother or father. "Hey, it's not my fault you kept falling for it," she defended herself. "I never even had to change it up, and you still never realized. You are just a little slow. I mean, if you spent a minute thinking about it before blindly following everyone everywhere, you'd realize it wasn't possible. You would even trust a lion leading you right into its den for dinner." "Slow?" He thought, offended. He wasn't slow. Admittedly, he fell for her trick far longer than he would be comfortable to admit without being embarrassed. But he was only too trusting of her because she was his sister. No one can be as fast as you, liar, he shot back angrily. In fact, maybe you should go up to the top caves yourself. I'm going to sit right here. She rolled her eyes. Fine, I'm sorry. You are the fastest, smartest boy I've ever met. Now can we go up? But for once, John had decided he wasn't going to bend to her demands no matter how much she pleaded, and he refused to budge off the rock, much to her shock. What if there is a bear, John? I can't take care of it myself, she pleaded. Then we go down, he informed her. I'm not taking another step up. Fine, she sulked moodily before marching up alone. When I find the cubs, don't think I'm going to bring you back to see them. After a couple minutes passed and John's fervor died down, he felt the beginnings of shame take him. What am I doing? I can't let her go up by herself no matter how annoying she was being. Leia could be in trouble right now and he'd never know. How fast could she have gone? He wondered while picking up his pace up the hillside to catch her. Soon he found himself running, and just as suddenly, John felt himself being forcefully yanked off the edge. He groaned lying on the ground, eyes stinging from the dirt and dust that was no covering him. What was that? He wondered in the midst of a coughing fit, feeling like he had broken every bone in his body in the fall. But he looked at his foot and found out exactly what it was. A vine, he thought dumbly. He had really gotten his foot tangled in thorny vines and dropped through a couple layers worth of rock. Thank the gods Leia hadn't seen that, she would have never let him live it down. He began creeping along the outer rim of the rock, trying to make out where he was before a sharp pain made him let out a wheeze. His foot was still entrapped in the embrace of thorns. I need my sword to cut free of this, he thought. But when he reached for it, it wasn't there. It must have slipped out when he fell. I'm stuck, he realized unhappily before vaguely making out a voice. That must have been his twin. Leia, he was about to call out just as the sound of a deeper voice gave him pause. Did you hear that noise? He heard a man's sharp voice, making him freeze. Probably another bear. Another waved him off. Dull beasts show up every other hour. John froze in place, making sure not to move a muscle. He knew just about every voice on the island, and that wasn't one of them he had ever heard before. There was a gap in the rocks, he realized, just a bit further away. If he could reach it, he could see what was going on at the other side. He pulled himself forward with a grimace of pain, feeling the thorns ripping deeper into his foot as he put an eye down toward the opening. It took every bit of energy he had to muffle his gasp of surprise. A ship. There was only one real ship on Bear Island, and that was Lord Jorah's. But the Lord of Bear Island was away on business. How could his ship be on the island still, and an isolated corner like here? John took another longer look and his heart started beating faster as it all made sense. It can't be. John muttered to himself in disbelief. But it was. There were wildlings, all tied up and bound and being loaded into the ship, and there right in the middle among strangers and the men that were supposed to have accompanied him days earlier was Lord Jorah himself, and John knew exactly what he was seeing, however much he hoped his eyes were deceiving him. The Lord of Bear Island was selling men into slavery. Selling men into slavery, it is an abomination. It is evil. The gods forever curse such an act. A man who can stoop to such lows, without care of the dishonor he brings to himself and his entire house, is a man who is dangerous and beyond redemption. His father had told him once. That is why anyone caught doing so must be put to death, son. Chapter 10, Chains Forged. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Jon Snow. John, he heard a frightened whimper. It was so soft and quiet he could barely make it out, but he had heard it nonetheless. Leia, he nearly breathed in relief. Leia, he shouted, I'm down here. And after a few minutes of making out rapid shuffling, grunts and jumps, he saw her grey eyes drop across from his. John, she flung herself into his arms with a choked sob, and he was so taken aback he didn't even react to the pain that went shuddering through his foot at the contact. Leia had never cried before. Not for as long as John could remember. Are you all right? He wondered, checking her body over in concern. Her face was caked in dirt and her knees scraped and muddy, but she looked to be fine otherwise, so he doubted she had run into a bear as he had feared she might. Could Jorah's men have possibly gotten to her? No, he quickly waved the idea away. I thought. I thought you were eaten by a bear, she admitted in a rush, and the idea of it was so unexpected that John couldn't help himself. He laughed. It's not funny. She punched his arm while wiping at her eyes furiously. When I came down you were gone from the rock. I've been searching for hours. And I almost thought you went back down without me, but I knew you would never do that because you are you. Then I found your sword just lying there and bear prints next to it, and it would have been all my fault. It's all right, he hushed her, pulling her tighter into his arms as he realized just how terrified about the situation she had gotten. I'm fine, Lai, really. Just trapped here. One of the mentions from her ramblings rang in his mind. Can you fetch my sword? I think I'll need